You are listening to the Doc Malik podcast. This show is 100% independent and fully funded by listeners like yourself. So, if you wish to support Ahmed in all that he is doing, then please subscribe to his channel on Spotify or his Substack. Or simply buy him a coffee with a one-off donation, links to which can be found at docmalik.com. Now, let's get on with the show.
You look pretty cool sitting in that seat. You know that? Right, what are we going to talk about?
How McDonald's make fake chicken nuggets.
Well, there is some chicken in it. You don't like processed junk food?
Hate it.
Why?
Because it's all fake.
What would you rather have?
Proper meat.
Proper meat. Yeah, from the farm? Yeah, we got a good farmer nearby, haven't we?
Yeah.
Do you like going to the farm and seeing all the animals?
Yep. But it stinks.
It does.
Because of cow poo.
Do you know, it's been a while since you've been on the show. Did you like your Christmas presents?
Yep.
What was your favourite?
80 Walker.
80 Walker. It's pretty cool. Should we go and play with it?
Yeah.
What about the walk that we did with Marianne?
I liked it, but I also didn't like it because I got peeled off skin.
Yeah, it's called a blister. Where we walked so far, it rubbed on your little wee belly boots.
Yep, it was 2 hours and half an hour.
2.5 hours. That's quite a lot for a little person like you, isn't it?
Yep.
Even I was tired. Did we see anything interesting on that walk?
Yes, llamas.
Llamas. Anything else?
Horses.
Yep.
A dead bird, which I didn't really like.
That was really sad, wasn't it?
Uh-huh. I think a fox killed it.
I think if a fox killed it, there wouldn't be much left of the bird.
Yeah. So it couldn't be a fox killed it.
No, I don't think so. Yeah. I don't know what killed it. It was very sad.
Yeah, it was.
It looked like a buzzard.
Mm-hmm.
You could see its big yellow claws.
Yeah. And first I ran right past it. I didn't even see it first. Until you guys spotted it.
Anyway, it was a nice walk. It was just a little bit long, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
And, baby boy, what else are we going to talk about?
Swimming.
What do you want to talk about swimming?
I moved up a level.
What does that mean?
I don't really know. I just moved up a level. I now don't have any armbands or floaties.
Maybe that's what going up a level means, that you don't need armbands or a floaty.
And it also gets harder.
But that means you're doing proper swimming.
Yeah, I know.
How does it feel?
Good.
Is it difficult?
Yep. Swimming without any armbands.
Well done.
And we also got more space to swim. Like, not from one bit all the way to the end, to the deep end, just a little bit more space.
Do you get nervous swimming?
Yep.
What do you get nervous about?
I don't really know.
There must be something you're nervous about.
I don't really know what I'm nervous about, but I just know I'm nervous.
Oh, baby, well done. So even though you're a little bit nervous and scared, you still do it.
Yep.
Why is that?
Because I also like it.
It's an important skill to know as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
How much love have you got in your love tank?
Full.
Is it full?
Up to 1,000.
I didn't know it went that high up. Why do you think it's important to talk about love tanks?
It's important to have love.
Why?
I don't really know. I just know it's important.
How does it make you feel when you're loved?
Be
And if you don't feel loved?
sad and upset and angry.
Oh, well, we need to keep that love tank full then, don't we?
Yeah. Sometimes you do make it overflow.
I make your love tank overflow?
Yeah.
How? How do I do that?
Too much love. I make it overflow.
Oh, I give you too much love?
Yep. It's overflowed.
Okay, does it get messy?
Yep.
Do I need to roll it back then?
Nope. I'll just have to fix it.
Oh, my love. Well, my love tank is full too, thank you so much.
Okay.
And how do you like being loved? What's your love languages?
Physical touch and quality time.
That's cool. Those are my love languages too.
And my sister's.
Isn't that funny? But physical touch doesn't mean tickling, does it?
It kind of does.
Does it?
Yep.
Can I tickle you afterwards?
You promise you'll never tickle us unless we said so. You can tickle me a little bit.
Okay, a little bit. How about if I hold you upside down and shake you all around?
I told you before, I hate that.
Okay, so not do that. How about swing you round and round and round?
Hate that as well.
Carry you like a spaceship.
Yep, I like that.
You like that one?
Yep,
All right, okay. And I tickle a little bit.
yep,
How about chasing you?
I like that.
How about wrestling with you?
No. And also, I'm also faster than my sister, both my sisters, and also all my sister's friends.
You are quite fast. That's because you zoom around a lot.
Yeah, and I was also racing my sister's friend.
And you're still faster than them. That's pretty cool. All right, you know who the podcast is today after this chat? You know the person who drew all this art on The Office?
No,
You know all these pictures?
no.
His name is Bob Moran.
Oh, now I know him from the book, from the Bob book.
Yeah, from the Bob book. What do you think of the Bob book?
Good.
It was good, wasn't it? Wasn't it interesting?
Yep.
Why did you like it?
But there's one thing.
What?
There's lots of words that I didn't understand.
Yeah, I know. And there's some funny pictures.
Yeah.
But there's important lessons on the book as well, isn't there?
Yeah, there is.
Like what? Do you remember any?
Not really, but I do remember one
Oh, what's that?
that they said, oh, I forgot it now.
Was it about the government?
Yep.
Was it about the vaccines?
No. It's about something that they said. I forgot it.
But he's a good cartoonist, isn't he? He's very good at drawing.
Yep, he is.
Anyway, he was in this studio sitting in your seat and he did a
What?
brilliant podcast with me.
When?
About 3-4 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, sitting in your seat. He was sitting there right now, Bob Moran. Okay, if you could tell him anything, what would you say to him?
Your book was brilliant.
I think he'd quite like to hear that. I think that'll make him quite happy. You know, he's got little children too.
No?
Yeah. And he's a freedom fighter, and everything he's doing is to protect his children and other children in the world. He's a good guy, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
He's a really good guy. You know, he lost his job as well, just like me.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, his dream job, he lost it because the people where he was working were telling him, stop talking about this, be quiet. He said no. And he lost his job. What does that tell you about him?
He's a good person.
Yeah, he's brave.
But the people that was at his work were bad people.
Bingo. Bingo. If people tell you to stop doing stuff, even though it's the right thing, what would you do?
Not stop.
Oh, baby, I'm so proud of you. Right, should we listen to the podcast then?
Yeah.
Should I say goodbye to everybody?
Goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for coming to my studio, my little humble studio. Do you recognize any of this beautiful artwork on the walls?
It's a bit like being in an art gallery of my own work. Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's nice, isn't
I
it?
didn't realise you had so many in here.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you, I love this one, the man's skull with the mask and the eyes like bursting. The sad reality is I know people like that.
Yeah, we all know people like that. But
Yeah.
that's a very popular one.
And that, just for people who aren't able to see, you won't be able to see this, but it's a mask and it's you can see the brain. It's like, I've got COVID again. Trust the science. Masks work. Women don't exist. Slava Ukraini. My government loves me. Freedom is selfish. I hate myself. Everything's Putin's fault. Yay, abortion. Get boosted now. Heart attacks are normal. There's a climate emergency. I mean, it's just a work of art, mate.
The thing about that, though, is, if I did it now, there'd be different categories. I feel like some of it needs updating a bit, maybe.
Yeah, well, you
Yeah.
can do that. You can do
Yeah.
that. 100%. And then the stuff about the BBC, the one behind you, the
Yeah.
defecating, the TV with fear pouring out of it. I mean, it's just the people leaving the brain at the altar of science.
What's good about the BBC one, unlike the phrenologic picture, is that never needs updating.
Yes.
It's constantly relevant, and it pops up all the time. Almost every day there'll be somebody sharing it again, just under a BBC article or something.
Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, look at that. Complete bullshit all over again. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about your history and your past and what you've been through, because you, like me, have probably given lots of interviews and you're bored of hearing your own goddamn story.
I really am, yes. Thank you for not asking me that. People can find out in plenty of other places.
Yeah, yeah. But you know what we do have in common is, you know, we worked really hard to get our basically dream job.
Yeah.
You know, I got my dream job. I wanted to be an orthopedic consultant. I wanted to be, you know, top of my game, my field, lecturing abroad, you know, well respected. And you got that. I got that.
Yeah.
And then,
and
now
you know,
where are we?
super mainstream too. Both, you know, we both picked pretty mainstream careers.
Yeah.
Worked really hard. And I suppose that meant the system had worked for us in the end, which means you have, although I'm obviously naturally skeptical and cynical because I'm a satirist and I've always been slight outsider. When the system has worked for you, you think it must be more or less okay. You know, I've made it. Which made it weird when all of this started. I think it's the reason why I didn't wake up on day one and go, oh God, this is a global conspiracy. You know, it was just, this is odd.
Yeah.
It took a while to let go and to come to terms with the fact that actually the system is not what I thought it was. You know, the machine is the problem.
Well, I am actually, it's crazy, the parallels. I am like you. I was very skeptical where it always felt a little bit odd outside the system. I thought it was my working class backgrounds. I thought maybe it's my Pakistani heritage. You know, I didn't know what it was. I just thought, but then I would meet other Pakistani Brits who were surgeons and doctors, and they were very much in the system. And I was like, well, maybe it's not that. And then I'd meet other people who were working class and they were in the system and very happy. And I was like, well, maybe it's not the working. Why am I different? Why don't I feel like I fit? And you know, I was slowly extricating myself from the system because I left the NHS, which, you know, no one really does that. Everybody stays embedded with it. But I found it to be a cult. And I found that I had already left my cult, my religious cult. Then I left the NHS cult because I was just so disillusioned and disgusted by what I was seeing. And now I'm full-time private thinking, okay, I can at least carve out my own way of practicing and I'm kind of sheltered from all the crap. And even within my own practice, I was changing from operating on like 30-40% of patients who'd walk through the door to ultimately 5% of patients. And I was in this process of just learning and getting really, just questioning everything that I'd been taught.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit. And like you said, I wasn't quite ready to go, I fell for the fear porn for, 4 or 5 weeks. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. Well, more or less the same. I mean, it was more a caution. This thing came out of the blue. People forget now. No one was prepared. It's a wham, pandemic. This idea of lockdowns that, none of us expected to suddenly be dealing with this stuff. And it was unfolding day after day.
Yeah.
And so I was immediately thinking, this is strange, with my journalist hat on. This is not following the normal patterns. This is not, these stories like this, virus stories, China, are supposed to come along and go away after a couple of weeks. And that wasn't happening. So I thought there's something really odd about this. At the same time, it seems pretty foolish to just decide it's nonsense if there is some danger, especially having a child who is disabled, has all kinds of potential vulnerabilities. I hate that word now. Obviously, the idea of the vulnerable was a nonsense. But at the time, you just think, okay, let's be a bit careful as a family.
Precautionary principle. Yeah,
I suppose. And like James Delingpole says, we were all bedwetters once for a bit. And I think that's true of a lot of people. Not that I know you meet people, there are plenty of people out there who knew straight away because they'd known about it for years. They've been waiting for something like this to happen and, all credit to them. But they're not going to be people like we were who were in a mainstream position, part of the machine. So it took a while for me to understand, but really, I think this is so important for people to get their heads around. The conclusion I came to first was, regardless of what's true about the story, this is ethically, morally wrong. It's just completely wrong. There's no justification for doing it. That's the starting point. And then you go from there, and eventually you do understand that there's a plan and it's huge and it potentially goes back years and years and years. But initially, there was no need to believe in a conspiracy to be against everything. Sometimes people on the other side really don't understand that. Sometimes people who are on our side of the fence forget that now.
Well, I agree. The way you've just worded it, because the thing is, from a medical point of view, the reason why I kind of woke up out of my fear porn, brainwashing was when they just said everybody just stay at home until you're practically dead, and there's nothing we can do about anything. And then when you're almost dead, come to hospital and we'll intubate you. And I was like, this is complete madness. This goes against everything. What about supportive measures? Hydration, salts, nutrients, vitamin D, antibiotics, because secondary bacterial infection is what really kills people.
Yeah.
From a viral pneumonia, so all of these things I was thinking, and oxygen, supplement oxygen, and blah, blah, blah. Like this idea that, just stay at home until you're practically dead kind of made no sense to me. It's just like, for example, as a surgeon, I used to say to patients, like, the longer you leave a problem, the harder it will be to fix it, the longer it will take for you to recover, the more complications will be involved, and the less likelihood that it will be successful. It's better to nip things in the bud nice and early. So it'll be less invasive to fix it. It'll be easier to recover and less complications. And it's the same across all of medicine. Everything's like that. It just makes sense. Look, if I leave this roof to leak for years, right, what's going to happen? The house is just going to fall apart.
Yeah.
But if I get in there and within a few months and fix my roof, it's going to cost less and it's going to be a quicker fix. Yes?
Yeah, exactly. But
that's not a conspiracy, by the way.
Do you not think that was all pretty deliberate? Suddenly projecting the opposite message, the opposite ideas that people had always practiced with, caring for sick people or dealing with an illness. Because I remember talking to really early, before any lockdowns or anything started, talking to a bunch of doctors, because in my wife's family there are a lot of medics and sciencey people, and we were having this conversation. This is when all the news is coming out of Italy, really early on. They don't have enough ventilators. They just have to ventilate everybody. And these doctors were explaining to me, that's nuts. I don't understand what they're talking about, because you don't just, if someone presents to you with an illness, some kind of respiratory problems, you don't just whack them on a ventilator, because any medics know that's pretty much a death sentence. You do that at the end, because
when you've got nothing else to lose,
going to come off it, basically. So this idea that we have to just ventilate everybody seems bonkers. I thought, oh, that's interesting. Why is this mass appeal from everyone's asking for more ventilators? And a few months later, most of those doctors were doing it here. Like they forgot.
Yeah.
Simply because an order had been handed down, protocol or whatever. Yeah, what we do is someone tests positive, whack a ventilator into them. And even when, a few months later, there were actually articles in mainstream newspapers and things saying, oh, it turns out people have been, excessively ventilated, and actually quite a lot of people died because they were put on a ventilator unnecessarily. But they just carried on doing it. It didn't change anything.
Well, I can tell you right now that protocols and guidelines has been the death of medicine.
Yeah.
It really has. And it all started when the introduction of NICE guidelines around about 2000.
Yeah. Okay.
And ever since that happened, the National Institute for Clinical Excellence, sounds lovely, doesn't it? It's always like that, Bob. It's always couched in a way that safe and effective. We're doing this for the greater good. We're saving granny. The devil works in a way that is like, oh, I'm here to help you. I'm a nice person. Well,
yeah.
It's the complete opposite.
It's the king of catchphrases.
It's the inversion. Yeah, king of catchphrase. But it's the inversions everywhere. So, these guidelines are written by a few select handful of people, often with massive conflicts of interest.
Yeah, of course.
Ties to big pharma, contracts, research grants. They're on the lecture circuit. They've made a name for themselves on a particular topic. So by definition, they will be promoting that said pharmaceutical drug. And then they write that script. And then all 300,000 registered GMC doctors have to follow what those handful of people have said. Can you see how easily corruptible the system is?
Yeah, of course.
And if you stray out of line and go, actually, I'm going to use my own brain and think for myself and practice individualized patient care, what is it, Bob, about you that is causing this problem? And how can I treat you, the individual? If you come out of the guidelines to do that, well, guess what happens? the wrath of the machine comes down. You get suspended, investigated. You might even lose your license.
It's odd though, isn't it? Because on the one hand, you exactly as you've just said, these kind of brainless automatons who just follow whatever protocol's handed down, even if it contradicts the one they had yesterday.
Yep.
Just we're doing what we're told. At the same time, you have this enormous kind of arrogance, God complex with so many doctors who, while they're just taking orders and not really thinking, they're also saying we are at a level above all of you, and we assign ourselves, gift ourselves the right to intervene in the intimate spaces of your lives and dictate what you can or can't do, who you can or can't see. This is what happened. The thing about all of these medics, everyone in the NHS, this was being done in their name. They just had no right. And that's what baffled me, is that none of them could see that even if you think this stuff is going to work, you don't have the right to do this to people. The psychological makeup of a lot of medics is pretty weird, isn't it? I mean, were you aware that you were different, even like in the early days when you were kind of at university studying? Because I spoke to Claire Craig about this, and she said that they obviously try to pick people who fit that mold, who are just going to do what they're told and aren't going to ask too many questions, and probably aren't that concerned about a moral compass, because they just delegate that. They just think that these bodies above them have sorted all the ethics out. And if you somehow wriggle into the system, if you smuggle yourself in as a free thinker, they don't really like you.
Right, to answer that question, I'd say I'm thinking about it as you've asked, right? I think there's three things. One, yes, what you're saying, they select medical students who are going to be compliant and obedient little worker bees who don't question.
Yeah. Two,
I think there's a societal shift. You know, the age of mavericks is frowned upon.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be the maverick. You can't be the different person, just the oddball. That's not true. You have to conform. You have to, self-censor, and it's, things like political correctness and all that kind of stuff. You just can't be the maverick. And that's a sad state of affairs, because mavericks are, really creative geniuses. And then the third thing I would say is medical schools like trauma-based mind control.
Mm-hmm.
You go through basically like the army recruits.
Yeah.
They whip you into shape. They beat you to pulp. And then you basically have everything erased from your previous life, and then you're imprinted upon.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember reading something about that, about how...
It might be my Substack.
As a junior doctor, the amount of sleep deprivation, for example, it's exactly what they do in the military and things, in kind of brainwashing programs. It's the same thing, essentially.
Yeah, I wrote about this on my Substack.
Yeah, that's probably where I read it. Okay.
It's exactly what I wrote. It's like I was saying all of this stuff that is basically trauma-based mind control. So, doctors, yes, they're selected, they're groomed, they're trauma-based mind control. In many respects, they are kind of victims, but I'm not letting them off the hook by saying that. Don't think that I'm saying, oh, it's not their fault. No. I'm just saying I understand that big part of it is that. But like I was telling a friend yesterday, he rang me up saying, "Doc, I need your help. My mom's got stage 4 cancer. I need your help. I'm going crazy. The doctors know fracking nothing, and it's infuriating. And they don't listen to a thing I say. They don't talk about nutrition or anything." And I said, the problem you're facing is that doctors are the most ignorant people you could ever imagine encountering.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the most arrogant. And that's the funny thing. It's so contradictory. But, they're so immensely ignorant, but sit on their professional hubris and arrogance. And it's like, oh my God, so they act like you know nothing when they know nothing.
Yeah.
And instead of having humility to say, oh, I'm sorry, I don't really know, they look down at you, go, what a stupid question. And it drives normal people mad.
Yeah. I think especially I don't know how to put this. I don't want this to come out the wrong way, basically, but
leave that to me. I do that all the time.
If you're a kind of pretty articulate, well-educated person, and you encounter a doctor, and you've obviously have done some reading yourself, or made some observations, or you're asking intelligent questions, that really annoys them. And I already had this before I kind of woke up, before 2020 and everything happened, because of our daughter, because she's severely disabled. She had all these health problems. So loads of consultants all the time. We're suddenly totally immersed in the NHS system, having to deal with these arrogant doctors. And, she was on loads of medication. She was having loads of physiotherapy. There was a big thing when she was little of trying to get her to crawl. She couldn't crawl. She has a brain injury from birth, cerebral palsy. And basically they'd said for a quote-unquote normal child, if they never crawl, it's not a big deal. They'll just get up and walk one day. But with Poppy, if she doesn't crawl and she doesn't form those new pathways in the brain, she'll probably never walk. So we just spent all our time desperately trying to get her crawling, and I would be there on my hands and knees trying to move her legs and her arms and doing all these different exercises every day. Nothing. It just wasn't happening. And she'd do this horrible kind of half commando crawl with one arm where she'd just drag herself along and she would have carpet burns all up her arm. It was really horrible.
Yeah.
Anyway, one day my wife says to me, I've heard about this osteopath, local osteopath. People say she's fantastic. I want to take her for an appointment. And being the mainstream normie I was at the time, I was dead against it. I was like, no, that's all nonsense. It's all new agey crap. It's not a waste of money. Anyway, she convinced me and we went along to this appointment, and this lady's there, and she's, lovely, really lovely lady, and she's just sort of putting her hands around Poppy's head and down her back, and I'm thinking, just being fleeced for 60 quid here, And then she put her down on the floor in the room, and she crawled.
Wow.
Immediately crawled.
Wow.
And it's like the closest thing to a miracle I've ever seen. But a couple of appointments later, she started walking or standing and trying to walk. And nothing that the NHS, the mainstream system, had done had got even close to accomplishing that. And so you suddenly become aware, okay, there is a lot they don't know. There are other things that work. Actually, osteopathy they use it in... where do they use it? In one of the big hospitals in London. It's used as a treatment. Chelsea and Westminster.
I'm not sure.
But it's not that shunned. But it becomes obvious that you need to look into this a lot more. Because if it can help a child like this, there's obviously something going on. I can't explain what actually happened. But there were other things, now we're at a point where we've kind of, we've cured her epilepsy by taking her off all the drugs, changing her diet, doing various other things. She's not had a seizure for over 2 years now.
Wow.
When you say this to, a consultant who's desperately trying to get in touch, saying, what's going on? He says, she's not having any seizures anymore. They're furious, Because, the first thing they say is, okay, great, what medication is she on? And you say, she's not on any. And then it's panic. You sense the panic, and they say, we've got to get her back on these drugs. It's really dangerous. She can't not be on the drugs. And you're saying, but she was having seizures the whole time she was on them.
Mm-hmm.
Now she's not. It's so illogical.
So, God, first of all, as a parent, I'm so sorry, your child had that, but she's still your beautiful Poppy and a gift. But I can't imagine the difficult moments you've had. I just can't. And I think that gives you parents a lot of strength of character as well. And as for the doctors, like getting angry or getting upset when you question, you're talking about the medical.
Yeah.
The reason why is because they're scared of losing face. Their self-esteem is so shallow and paper thin that the slightest critique, they are terrified they will expose their for what they are. You're basically pulling back the curtain on the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
And you can't do that. What would the Wizard of Oz do if someone tried to pull the curtain back? They'd be squealing, no, don't do that.
Yeah.
And I'm a product of the system. I remember hearing about osteopaths and chiropractors and podiatrists and thinking bloody quacks.
Yeah.
We're the proper doctors.
Yeah.
We got an MD. And part of the disillusionment for me was I became the consultant, right? And up until that point, mate, it's like an obstacle course. You know, imagine trying to write an essay while you're doing an obstacle course, running up the ropes, dragging yourself through the mud. You can't, right?
Yeah.
You're just in the fucking obstacle course.
Yeah.
Sorry for swearing. And then you become a consultant. You got a little bit more time to relax and view the landscape. And then you start trying to figure stuff out. And this is where I started getting doubts. So I was suddenly very overweight, type 2 diabetic, fatty liver. And I go to my consultant colleagues, my peers, and they'd be like, oh yeah, you need to start this med. And the guy who's a diabetologist is overweight, eating donuts. And he's like, yeah, don't worry, I'm on metformin. It's great. And I'm thinking, how have I got here? How am I taking advice from an overweight diabetic eating donuts, telling me to take this medication? It just doesn't, it's so ludicrous. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And my dad's dying of cancer and he's telling me, son, you can't live like this. So my wife and I are going this like crash course to figure out, because she's a doctor, I'm a doctor. Like, why are we both overweight? Why are we so sick? And then in the process of a year, we've lost all our weight. I've reversed my type 2 diabetes, my hypertension, my fatty liver. I'm not on any meds and I'm feeling the best I've ever felt. And then I look at everything that I've done and I go, why was I not taught this in med school?
Yeah.
And it was like a huge light bulb moment. And that's the basis of my book, Doc Malik's Simple Guide for Good Health. You don't need to spend any money. Everything is free. Yeah. That's the funny thing. You don't need wearables. You don't need constant monitoring devices. You don't need any of this bullshit to be healthy. And I'm like, that for me was one of the biggest wake-up calls. We weren't taught this in med school. So then guess what? I went to see an osteopath about my back just to see what it's like. I was like, you know what? I'll be a scientist. I'll experience this, you know? It's like, wow, these guys know a lot. Wow, that really helped. I just went to see a chiropractor about my neck and it's 99% better now. I mean, I could barely move my neck. I had this horrible shooting pain. He diagnosed me within a minute. He knew it was a C7 nerve root, no MRI scans, no nothing. He had me on his table and he manipulated my spine and blah, blah, blah. And honestly, 90% of my symptoms got better. And then over the last few weeks, it's just got better and better and better. Holy moly. Like, it was crazy. And so now, you know, I've gotten stuff from medical herbalists. Yeah. I've had acupuncture. I've got homeopathy kit, you know, I use. You know, what I'm trying to say is your average mainstream doctor now would look at me and go, wow, check Ahmed. He's fucking lost the plot. He's a complete quack now.
Pretty healthy, though. You know, stuff's actually being cured. I mean, I would say, you know, obviously, with any of this stuff, you've got to find the right person. Yeah, and there are homeopaths. I mean, for example, with homeopathy, we saw a homeopath early on who was crap. You know, he didn't really know what she was on about, and that put us off it. And then in more recent years, we found an amazing one who's done, you know, and actually, the homeopathy really helped with the whole getting rid of the epilepsy thing, stopping the seizures. The thing about most of this stuff is that if it doesn't work, it's not going to harm you. That's the big difference with medical drugs and interventions operations. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but you're fine. It's not like going on a course of some experimental drug with all kinds of side effects that's probably only making you worse. The other thing is, most of these people, good practitioners of this stuff, can list tons and tons of people who they've actually cured, they've actually made better. You go to most doctors and say, how many people have you actually cured who've come in here? It's going to be a really short list. Because that's not what doctors are about.
Absolutely.
You know?
And, you know, it's a good point you make about the homeopathy person not being that great. Well, listen, in my experience, I've found that 45% of people of whatever trade are just rubbish, like really hopelessly. 45% are average. And then, like, as in like average ability, just get the job done. And then you've got 10% who are just fantastic. And honestly, it's whether it's a roofer, whether it's a doctor, whether it's a homeopath, whatever. And when you find someone who's really good, you hold on. And when I mean very good, it's not just technical capability, competence. I'm talking about, like, you know what, they're good at communicating with you.
Exactly.
When you message them, they get back to you. Or, for example, they're honest and say, You know, like how many doctors have you heard say, "I'm sorry, I don't know, but I'll look and try and find out." Or you know, anyone, a car mechanic who goes, you know, I don't know what's going on here. You know, I need to figure this one out. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You know, just being honest with you and saying, I don't know, but I'll try and find out. And if they don't know, they'll refer you to someone else who might know. And then someone who's not going to fleece you and completely rip you off. You know, just someone who's honest. And, you know, what I'm saying, all these qualities, trying to get all of these things, and they're technically very good and competent, 10% of people. So just because the first time you meet an osteopath, and if they're not very good or physio or whatever, you don't give up on the whole profession. You're like, you know, you go, okay, fine, maybe I need to try someone else. And the best way is actually word of mouth, I find. You know?
Yeah, that's what we found too. Yeah. You just, you know, try and make some new friends, which obviously we all have who are into this stuff, who know about alternative medicine, and just ask, you know, do you know anyone who's good at this? Have you had a good experience? That's the best way to go about it. The other thing these people will often admit is, which I like, is if sometimes something has been cured or made better or improved, and you say, I think this is because of what you did. Some of them will say, no, that won't be what I did. That will be something else. That'll be this other thing you're doing.
Yeah.
Which also makes me really respect them, because you think you could easily just take ownership of that, take the credit for it, and they don't.
That's such a good point. 100%.
Yeah.
I like that as well. Yeah, I 100%. People say, you know, wow, thanks for doing that. I'm like, nah, time would have done that anyway. I don't think it's got anything to do with me.
Yeah.
It just would have gotten better anyway. But again, people are either not willing to admit they've done something wrong, or they take credit for something that they don't deserve taking credit for. And that's again back to lack of honesty. Just being honest and just saying, like, I don't know. This is one of the reasons why I'm, you know, to help pay the bills, I'm going to be offering this consultation business where I'm not going to be a doctor treating you or diagnosing you.
Yeah.
But what I'm going to do is guide you and educate you. Like, people are just saying, I've seen this doctor and I don't understand what this diagnosis means. I don't know what my options are. And I think that they just don't know who to trust anymore. Like, just basic, simple, unfit, you know, uncaptured, unadulterated information, pure information, without someone saying, right, well, I need to give this drug because I need to hit a certain number of targets. You know, that's what GPs do now. They need to prescribe a certain percentage of people with a statin or what.
Yeah.
How's that informed consent? How's that, you know, proper medical ethics? You know, because as a practitioner, I'm potentially giving you a drug, not because it's in your best interest, but because, you know, I've got a quota to hit. If I don't get the quota, the practice doesn't get a bonus. This is how it works, Bob.
There's no way that many people could behave like that day after day, year after year, unless that something had been done to them psychologically, unless they'd been through that kind of torture process. You know, I mean, I know it's a certain kind of person. I know the kind of people who went on to become doctors who were at school. You know, they were the goody two-shoes, like straight A's all the time. They were, you know, sports captains, school captains, won all the prizes. I went to a posh school. I'm giving it away now. But you could tell the ones who are going to be doctors, and they never, to an extent, I realized they never get out of that mindset of pleasing the people above them.
Yes.
You have to get a good report at the end of term. You have to pass this exam. You're expected to be the best, and you know, you can't just stay where you are. You've got to be better.
100%.
It's like that. But at the same time, they weren't total assholes. These were not wicked people.
No.
Something has to be done to them to get them to a point where, because those people, if years later they're suddenly in that position where it's like, you just got to give this number of drugs to people a year, it doesn't really matter whether they need them or not, they would have gone, hang on a minute, this is not why I wanted to become a doctor. This doesn't seem to fit. But it's like the thought doesn't even enter their brain.
Right, about what you said about the school thing, and people please, it's so funny you should say that. So the podcast that came out today is with David Edelman, and it reminded me of what he was saying, and that he said the schooling system is designed to make you a people pleaser and say yes. They strip away that most powerful word that is the first thing you normally usher when you come into the world, which is no. You know, and as dads, you know, we know about that. Can you please tidy up? No. Can you pick that up? No. But the schooling system strips that away from you, so you don't say no anymore. It's like, yes, yes, miss, yes, sir, yes, Yes. I want to people please you all the time. And David Edelman talks about, like, you need to start with yourself. Just start saying no.
Yeah.
Just say no. I'm not going to say no. I'm going to say no just for the sake of saying it. Even if I'm going to say yes later, I'll start off with a no.
Yeah.
And the thing is, doctors are definitely people pleasers and want to get on and, you know, conform, and they trust the government. And you know, why shouldn't they? Because look, they work hard and then they get a decent job and they get respected. Everybody respects them. Even now, after poisoning millions, they're still respected. So, you know, the system is helping them. System works for them. The government's good to them. So why are they going to question that government? Why are they going to question the hand that feeds them and is taking care of them? So I think there's a lot going on. There's cognitive dissonance. There's hubris, arrogance, groupthink, conformity, trauma-based mind control. I mean, there's so much really, honestly, going on in the medical world. But also, I think a big thing that actually is to the wider society is people now are living a lie.
Yeah.
You know, they lie that they look great and that they're healthy and that the dad bod is okay and that they've got a great relationship with their partner and they you know, that they love their kids and know their kids and their kids love them, that they're happy with their job and their boss is great and they've got purpose in their life. They're living so many lies, right? They just perpetuate the lie like it's safe and effective. Of course, I'm getting my next bill. Of course, it's safe and I'm not getting the next one, but it was still safe and effective while I was taking them. I'm not going to have the ninth one or the 10th one anymore, but they were still safe and effective. It's all, their whole life is based on this deck of cards of lies. And if they take one down, the whole thing falls apart. And I think the way that then manifests itself is illness, anxiety, depression, and a feeling of being dead inside, you know? Maybe that's a bit too dramatic.
No, that's
you
not.
See what I mean?
It's you know, almost an understatement to the extent that we are all living in a world that is completely dominated by illusion. That's the deal. We are here battling with deception every day. We're like a mouse being toyed with by a cat all the time. Those above us, the powers at the top, constantly trying to deceive you. And one of the big problems, like you're saying, is people have become so detached from what is actually reality in being able to observe what's real. They've even delegated that to other people. So like the jabs thing, it's a really good example. And they obviously knew they'd got people to the right level to be able to pull this off after hundreds of years of gradually destroying people's discernment. But everyone now, it's been 4 bloody years, right? Everyone has been living in this world where they may have taken the jabs. They might have had 2 or 3. They all know lots of people who had none. They didn't have a single injection. And they have watched the people around them who had these things dropping dead or getting turbo cancer or having immune problems or just, fundamentally changing in their personality, whatever it is, being really badly affected, generally getting ill all the time. And they've seen that all these other people they know who didn't have any are absolutely fine. And none of these bizarre things are happening to them. That is evidence. It's the evidence of your own lived experience. You can't get any better than that. And if you talk to anyone else anywhere in the world, they've had the same experience. So you know exactly what is happening. But most people now, they'll still be saying, when you try and say, well, obviously the jabs were horrific, where's the evidence? They'll say, where's the evidence? What they mean by that is, I've seen that happening all around me for 4 years, but I will not accept that that's real unless a doctor, a politician, a journalist writes it down on paper and officially publishes it.
Do you think if Piers Morgan says, yeah, it's really dangerous and they're really bad, do you think people believe it then?
Piers Morgan.
Do you not think?
Well, he's trying to say that now. This is what he's trying to say now. Well, it turns out that, I believe that they stopped infection and it didn't. The problem with this, as I keep saying, is that even if that were true, what he said was disgusting. It doesn't change his disgusting fascist views on like, oh, so what you're saying, and that annoyed me in that
Let me pull up some lines. Yeah, keep going. What do you think of that?
Tucker Carlson interview, because he didn't, you need to jump on these people when they say that and say, okay, Piers, so what you're saying is...
Tucker gave him an easy ride.
Yeah. It's like, okay, if it had stopped transmission, you would have been completely okay to say that the state can withhold people's rights for not undergoing what is a permanent medical procedure. That's your view, is it? Make these people own their position. It's just like, oh, yeah, sure. None of us really knew what was going on. It's good that you've admitted now. It's like, but he hasn't admitted. He's not acknowledged the bit he got wrong.
Yeah.
Which is not believing the bullshit about what it did. It was that was entirely him. That Piers Morgan came out and said, I'm a morally repugnant fascist who thinks that people should have their rights taken away if they don't have a medical procedure.
Amen. Amen. So I'm going to read something to you. This is Piers Morgan's X account.
Oh.
Those who refuse to be vaccinated with no medical reason not to should be refused NHS care if they then catch COVID. I'm hearing of anti-vaxxers using up ICU beds in London. That's a lie. At vast expense to the taxpayer. Let them pay for their own stupidity and selfishness. That was one. Footballers who refuse to be jabbed should be refused treatment for injuries. After all, why should they trust doctors about treatments for broken legs and torn ligaments if they don't trust them about life-saving vaccines?
Yeah.
Right? Next one. I need an urgent vaccination against all the anti-vax loons currently bombarding me with their unhinged ramblings, fueled by a Z-list conspiracy theorist, blocking them as fast as I can, but they're mutating faster than the virus they say doesn't exist. Clowns. 127,000 healthcare workers in Britain, by the way, I'm going to clarify that because this is not correct, and I'll explain why in a second, have refused to have a safe vaccine that will help protect their sick, old, vulnerable patients from contracting a deadly virus. Yep, so it's not deadly, nothing deadly about it. We don't even know if it was a virus. We don't know what it was. Mandate or no mandate, these people are all in the wrong job. They don't care enough to do it properly. So hold on one second. So what we're saying is people who actually believe in medical ethics, informed consent, bodily autonomy are not fit for that role. And the people that should be fit for that role are blind automatons who believe authoritarian regimes and go against bodily autonomy and medical ethics. Can you see how ludicrous we're... And that nasty piece of work has still got a high-paid job, being interviewed around the world, and has got a platform. And I just think any average normal person, like me, for example, who spoke out against the vaccines and who spoke out against transgender mutilating surgery, look at me. I've been suspended and kicked out of hospitals and see where I am now. But this guy can say these horrible, disgusting, repugnant things and not even apologize for it, and he gets a free pass. It's crazy.
We are the Z-list conspiracy theories he's just described there.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, proudly so. But you're right. But I think, some of these people are characters, as in some of these people are, I think, filling a very specific role. Piers Morgan is the most pompous, arrogant, but wrong person you could come up with. So he's not wrong and kind of inarticulate.
He's a pantomime baddie.
Bit of a mess.
He's a pantomime baddie.
Yeah, he's pantomime baddie. And I look at, sometimes I try to avoid him and not give him a lot of my time, but sometimes I see clips from his shows recently. In the last year or so, it's almost like they've deliberately had guests on his show to absolutely dismantle his stupid arguments and kind of embarrass him, especially over the Israel-Gaza stuff, which he gets wrong in exactly the same way as he got everything else wrong. Because that was also in the Tucker Carlson interview, he starts saying that, deliberately targeting women and children is morally justified. And even Tucker Carlson's going, whoa, hey, you can't say that. What are you talking about? I think this is deliberate with Piers Morgan. They're holding somebody up and saying, listen to this guy. He's just disgusting and wrong on everything. And kind of, we're going to embarrass him. We're going to humiliate him by having all these smarter people with morals come on his show and just totally expose him. But he's never going to go away. He's just going to keep making loads of money and being the person everyone wants to talk to and being this voice that, should matter to us, apparently. That's kind of a form of torture in a way, but it's also about trying to gradually manipulate people so eventually they think Piers Morgan must be right, or I wouldn't keep seeing him. You know, he wouldn't keep being this high-profile figure. There must be some truth in what he says.
Yeah. Do you know those tweets that he was posting, those vile tweets, right? Do you want to know something funny? Doctors were doing the same thing in this private Facebook group.
Right.
So my wife got me to join this private Facebook group, thinking at the time that it will convince me to take the shot and that everything. It did the opposite.
Yeah.
I was just looking at the shit show in front of me. You know, there's literally tens of thousands of doctors on this group, and the stuff they were coming at was awful. You know, anyone who was remotely questioning the vaccine safety, they're piling on, ridiculing, calling them an anti-vaxxer, a loony. We should deprive people of medical care. We should not give them organ transplant. I mean, these are medical doctors saying that we should deny people medical care because they've not been vaccinated. It's just shocking. Like, you would think doctors would know something about medical ethics, and it went out the window. I mean, recently, for example, Chris Whitty said that, you know what? The decision to mandate was 100% political and decision, and you know, I was skeptic about it. Hold on one second. You're the chief medical officer. The key word in there is chief.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know about you, but when I grew up, chief means you're the top dog. So you're the top dog medical officer in the country, representing 300,000 doctors. You should be, standing up and defending medical ethics, and you should have been saying to the government, "Hey, this is going against everything that's medical ethics. You know, we can't be doing this mandate. I'm going to resign over this."
Yeah.
And does the GMC come after him and go, "You of all people, the highest profile doctor, you did not do the right thing when it came to good medical practice. We're going to investigate you and suspend you." Sir Chris Whitty. No, that doesn't happen.
Well, I mean, as I understand it, in terms of the UK and who was calling the shots, pun intended, Chris Whitty was way above any politician. You know, Chris Whitty and Vallance were much more aware of the agenda, much more in control of what was and wasn't going to happen.
Really?
And I think all the politicians were totally subservient to them, as I understand it. Not that there weren't people above those two, but from the things I heard about meetings, you know, at Downing Street between editors and Whitty, Vallance and the Prime Minister, they were in charge.
Wow. But now they're making it look like, we were just advising the government. They were making the decisions. Yeah. And there's a meme that I've used where, I don't know if you've seen the Spider-Man, where there's like 10 of them around a circle pointing fingers at each other.
Oh, yes, I know that one.
And I did one on my Instagram, and I said, the WHO is blaming the Fauci, and Fauci's blaming Gates, and Gates is blaming the politicians, and the politicians are blaming someone else. You know, everyone's pointing fingers at everyone else. No one is accountable, like the MHRA. The MHRA are meant to defend the public from pharmaceutical companies exploiting and taking advantage of the public. They're meant to make sure the drugs are safe and are properly regulated. But now they're not. Now apparently they're enablers. And you know, and if you say to the MHRA, why has this product come in? And do you know what's the ingredients? They go, we're going by government guidance. Then you go to the government, the politician, and they go, we're going by the MHRA guidance. Yeah. You're just going round and round in circles. But no one takes responsibility.
But really clever the way they've set this up. And that's the same everywhere. Like, people shouldn't think, it's just what happened in the UK. That's the same in every country. Every single body that was supposed to be there to protect against this happening and to check things and investigate stuff failed in every system.
Funny that, isn't it? Funny coincidence.
And the same thing is happening in every country, where then later they can just point the finger at each other in the Spider-Man meme. It's been set up like that deliberately.
And it's not even individuals, by the way. That's another thing that really annoys me. It's these agencies or entities that are not a person. You cannot go and shake hands with the government. But the MHRA, you know, who in the MHRA, right? You'll never say a named person.
Oh, no.
So it's always the MHRA or the government or the public health department or the CDC.
Nebulous body.
It's a nebulous body. And it's like, I want to fracking hang the individuals who did this. Shut up and stop hiding behind the facade. But they've done this.
Yeah.
Like, look, you've driven here 2.5 hours. You go 1 mile over the speed limit. You get a ticket.
Yeah.
Right. The smaller the crime or indiscretion, you're into trouble. But the bigger the crime, you do democide, and guess what? You get away with it and promoted, and get a knighthood and billions in your pocket. It's
partly because I think everyone is subconsciously aware of this, at least, that a crime on this scale, which is we've just lived through, well, it's actually still going on, hasn't finished yet, but a crime on this scale, which is deliberately setting out to kill billions, eventually, of people, and covering it up, or trying to cover it up, to actually deal with that properly would require the removal of everything, pretty much. The total dismantling of everybody, every kind of safety system, every health system, all of politics. Everyone is kind of aware at some level, well, we can't do that because they can't even imagine what that would mean, how they could move on from that. So they make a decision to just let it slide because it's too big. I think that's part of what's gone. I mean, I want to talk about this. It's just sort of related, and I don't know about you, but I've been getting pretty frustrated lately looking at Twitter, X.
you have the same reaction as me then.
People are getting in such a muddle. This is people who would describe themselves as awake and kind of think they're aware of what's happened. Obviously, there's the Trump thing that I have a big issue with. I don't understand why people are on that train. There's also now all this noise about gain of function, the lab leak, Fauci stuff. And it's kind of very similar to the Operation Warp Speed, which works in a slightly different way. But, what's happening is people are being handed opportunities to get one of the bad guys, right? So they say, we've got evidence that Fauci was doing gain of function research to make mutant viruses, and he made COVID-19. You thought, first of all, why on earth would the government invest billions of dollars, go to these scientists and say, okay, we need a mutant virus. Sure, what do you want it to do? More or less nothing. Who do you want it to affect? Old people. What, healthy old people? No. Really sick old people who are already in hospital with Alzheimer's, cancer, heart disease. Just those people. Right. Okay, they're dying anyway. Exactly. So you want us to make a virus that essentially creates no abnormal situation compared to what's always happening. Nobody does. It was not a mutant. If it existed at all, it wasn't dangerous. That's the whole point. But what's happening is people are going, look, Fauci made this and he funded it and we can arrest him. And accidentally, what's happening there is people are being asked to agree that there was a deadly virus and a horrific pandemic, and that was the crime.
Yeah.
And they can't see it. And I think part of the problem is they're not, people are not starting this narrative in the right place. What I mean by that is when people imagine, I know some people will say, oh, this has been going on for years, Bob. It started way before, hundreds of years ago. Yes. I mean, this particular episode, this particular part of the grand agenda we've just lived through, people start it at the end of 2019. And they think a pandemic was announced, and then it kind of snowballed from there. And then they rushed these jabs out, and they were dangerous. And you've got to go back much further, and you have to begin the whole thing, when you think about it, with the creation of the injections first, as the first thing that happens. Now I would think at least 15 years ago, okay, from where we are now. A group of people make these injections, and they made them very specifically to do exactly what they are now doing. They weren't trying to make a cure, they weren't trying to make a vaccine, they were trying to design a horrific poison that either kills you, makes you permanently ill, or fundamentally changes your biological makeup, your DNA, and alters what you are as a person. Then they tested it very, very meticulously, tested it to make sure it would do those things I think that on different genders, different races, different age groups, different health conditions, to see exactly how it would behave. How many people are going to die the next day? How many people will die after 2 weeks? How many after 6 months? How many people will be fine after 10 jabs, roughly? So we have an idea of what's going to happen. Okay, so we know what we've made. We know how it's going to behave. How do we now get it into as many people on Earth as possible? So they go to the best and most wicked behavioral scientists, psychologists, history experts, political experts, and say, listen, we need a way of getting this stuff that is horrific into as many people alive as possible. How do we do it? And then they say, well, the best thing to do is going to be to stage a pandemic. You stage a global pandemic and you time it like this. And these are the different administrations you have in each country, because we've studied all the politics in different countries. So the best thing is to have Trump in America, Boris Johnson in the UK. These things were not anomalies, they weren't accidents. They'd been prepared in advance. They knew that here, Boris Johnson-led Tory government was the way to do it. In America, they had to have Trump at the beginning. It wasn't an accident. There's bollocks about, it was supposed to be Hillary. No, that would have been stupid. They figured all this out, and they said, if you do this, and you time it like this, you have all this propaganda, you seed all of the effects of these jabs in advance in the virus narrative. You come up with this stuff, long COVID. You get the media pushing weird excuses for heart attacks, normalizing the fact that...
Like gardening.
If you garden or have a shower or wear socks in bed, you have a heart attack at 22. In advance. And then, so everything is, that's the plan. They already had these things, and then what we saw in 2020 was just the execution of that plan. But I think it's really important for people to understand that these jabs must have already existed. And the whole point of everything that unfolded from 2020 onwards was just about trying to get people to take these injections. I think too many people still don't see it like that when they talk about things like Operation Warp Speed, or they get invested in the idea of the lab leak. They don't really get it, because obviously, if that's your plan, and these people say to you, listen, the way you do this is you just say there's a virus, you give it a name, and then you have these tests, these totally bogus tests that essentially mean nothing, but that will make it real for people, because they'll think it's everywhere. They'll think they've got it, and you tell them that the symptoms are you don't have any symptoms, all of this rubbish. And obviously, if there's nothing, it gives you total control. You can time it properly. You can decide when and where you want it to pop up. You can decide how long it goes on for. If you have something real, you can't do that. It's a massive, massive risk, because you don't know how it's going to behave. You don't know what it's going to turn into, where it's going to go, whether people are going to notice that. So the last thing you do is actually have a genuine dangerous virus that you release, because that would be stupid. And if you're told, look, you can do this whole thing without it, why would you choose to have one?
I'm open to that it was some kind of poison or toxin or EMF radiation or whatever.
Yeah, well, listen, this is where it gets a bit nuanced, because, and I've said this before, I don't think there was absolutely nothing.
Exactly.
So within this plan I've just described,
so
by the way,
something. I'm with you 100% with everything you've said.
Yeah.
100%. But there was also something they threw in.
Yeah.
And I think it was a poison. I think it was a toxin or some EMF radiation, or maybe a bit of everything. Something was there.
Something happened because...
in select places.
There are people, very small number of people, who I've met, and you've probably met.
I had that.
Who had something weird. And I had something very weird.
January.
End of 2021, I think.
January 2020, before it even kicked off.
Oh, really? And was it like, no loss of taste and smell?
100%. And it was like, I've had flu before. It was not like that.
No.
Seriously. So I was traveling into London quite a lot. And so this is another thing that's interesting. No one else in my family got it.
Same. Yeah.
So I'm sleeping with my wife and she's not getting it. So I'm driving in and out of London, right? I come down with something. So what I'm trying to say, it wasn't like contagion, because if it was contagious,
No.
why did no one in my family get it?
Yeah.
Right. So I've suddenly got something, and I'm desperately sick. I'm feverish. I'm unwell. I've got this horrible dry barking cough. And I remember, because my wife was not very sympathetic. Oh, for God's sake, can you be quiet? And I was like, I can't help it. I can't. This is involuntary. And it was like deep in my chest. Like I wanted to cough something out, but I couldn't. There was nothing coming up. And I was having horrendous fevers and chills. And it was just different. And I'd lost my sense of smell and taste. Like more than I've ever lost. Totally.
Yeah.
Like not a little bit, like a lot.
And it's really, did you find that really disturbing? That really freaked me out.
It freaked me out in no end. And then I had the most intense headaches.
Yeah.
Like my brain was about to explode.
Yeah.
And I've never had that. I'm not a migraine-y type of person. And so my brain, I felt like, oh my God, just like, it was just going to explode. And I was like, what is happening to me?
Yeah.
Like I haven't got phlegm or sputum. And then I got better. But then guess what? I was better for a day and then I crashed again.
Okay.
And I was like, what is going on? And then I started having phlegm. And I contacted my friend who's a private GP, and he got me a course of antibiotics, doxycycline. And I took the course of antibiotics, and then suddenly I was better.
Mm-hmm.
But the sense of smell took about 4 months to get better.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I had gone down to see my accountant at the time, and he was like, wow, you're really unwell. I was sweating, shivering, blah, blah, blah. And he messaged me 3 months later.
Smelled really bad, but you didn't know.
Yeah. He messaged me 3 months later. He was like, Ahmed, you had COVID. You had COVID in January.
Yeah, of course.
And I was like, oh, he goes, oh, I think you're the first person who ever, like, I know it. And I was like, so what I'm trying to say is I fracking had something. So when people say, oh, there was nothing, I'm like, well, my lived experience tells me otherwise. There was something. And I've got doctors who've shown me x-rays of people's lungs being glassed at.
Yeah,
and
the glass lungs,
And they're like, it was like radiation poisoning. Something weird was happening to some people.
Yeah. So what you've just said tallies exactly with the other people who I've spoken to who said they had something, but it's a tiny, tiny number. So obviously, as we know, the vast, vast majority of people who think they had COVID had totally bog standard illness.
Yeah.
Or they weren't ill at all. Most of them actually, there was nothing wrong with them, but they think they had it because of a test.
Agreed. Yeah.
But there is a very, very tiny number of people who got something weird, exactly as you just described. All of them say, didn't pass it to anybody else in my family, not for want of trying, because they were trying to find out, And every single one of them had just traveled to somewhere else, not where they live, often to a big city.
Yep.
London, Birmingham, somewhere like that. Come back, they get this thing. Everyone totally loses taste and smell. And I had this drowsiness, this weird drowsiness, almost like being drunk, tired, and having to nap in the afternoon, which I never normally do. I didn't feel, it wasn't like being ill. I could still function. I just felt really, really strange. And it lasted for about 2 weeks. And then, 100%. Like you say, my taste and smell took ages to get right again. For a long time, I had this like metallic thing on my tongue.
Yes.
Even when the taste came back, I had a horrible metallic thing. Somebody said to me, well, that is a sign of poisoning. That's what happens when you've been poisoned. You get this metallic thing.
Yes.
So that existed. That was a real thing that happened to a few people.
I think that was poisoning.
It was obviously a poison.
Yeah.
And what I imagined that was again, because it's a poison, and there are a number of different explanations for how they did this, spraying in the sky, was it EMF, something in the water, whatever. There are lots of different ways to poison people. Although I think it would have been, the thing about the EMF that appeals to me doesn't appeal to me, but the 5G theory, that they had these 5G towers, they turn them on in specific places at specific times. If you happen to be near enough to it, like driving through Birmingham, for example, on that day, you're going to get hit by this thing.
Yes.
Then they switch it off again. That gives them the ability to really control how many people were being affected by this. What it meant was that you have all the anecdotes.
Because our symptoms were like radiation poisoning.
Yeah. If you look into the symptoms of radiation poisoning, it's all that. Weirdly, if you remember, right at the start, before they made the symptoms, no symptoms, or all symptoms of everything, they were fairly specific, and they did actually say, "Oh, you lose your taste and smell, and you feel," and it's not like a cold. they were kind of honest about just in describing this weird poisoning thing that some people got. And then they sort of changed it. Forget about that. It's just anything, if you've got a sore toe, it's COVID, whatever. But I think what they were doing was trying to make sure there were enough people out there with these anecdotes. Well, I think I had it. I'm pretty sure I had something weird.
Yeah, exactly.
And also there would have been enough doctors here and there encountering this bizarre thing that, and like we've just explained, because of the way doctors' brains don't work, they didn't think, hang on a minute, this is weird, but it really doesn't seem like a viral infection. This is something else. Actually, it's more like a toxin. Let's investigate that.
Yeah.
Because they've been told there's a virus going around, it's just like, okay, my starting point is this is the virus, and I'm not going to question that, and I'll go from there. That's the whole problem with this. And then they do research, and they write papers, and they go, this is what the virus does to the lungs. This is what's, it's causing all these additional problems in the body, and that's what we know the virus does. And they never ever go back to the starting point and say, well, what if it's not a virus?
Was the original presumption correct or not? Was the original assumption correct? Of course it wasn't. Look, I'm just looking at something right now. I want to pick your brains about this. So basically, Anthony Culp on Substack's written a great piece. Breaking news, breaking promises. Yeah. So right now you talked about the Hopium bandwagon, train ride. Choo-choo. It sounds like you're not on it.
No, I'm really not on it. It's hard not to be on it, right? And you get a hard time, and you do feel like you're shitting on everyone's parade all the time. But it's really dangerous. We've got to. I have to tell it like it is.
Yeah, I have to tell it like it is. And it's funny. I didn't get cancelled to now censor myself because I'm going to lose a few subscribers because I'm not on the Trump bandwagon. Like, I don't work like that. I'm going to say it as it is. It's on that sign on itself. I'm going to be honest about what I think. I might be wrong. Oftentimes I am wrong, but I'm going to say it how I think. And I'm not on the bandwagon. I'm not on the choo-choo train, right? So anyway, this article writes about RFK calls Operation Warp Speed an extraordinary accomplishment.
I saw that, yeah.
Dude, it made me go, what the frack? Like, I knew I couldn't trust him. He's a politician. He's got a very checkered past. He's a bit of a dodgy character. He's done some good, but he's not this clean bill of health that everybody thinks he is. They've manufactured this image of him, okay, which isn't 100% correct. But anyway, he also in the hearings, this is nomination hearings, said, I'm pro-vaccine.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sorry, anyone on the Trump, Elon, Donald, Bobby train, choo-choo, who thinks it's perfectly fine to say that, and they're playing 14D chess, and it's all about getting the people.
No, that's what you don't understand. It's genius. This is the genius plan.
It's the genius.
They're exposing them all. I wonder, do you wonder this? I wonder how far people will take that. What is the line?
What is the line, dude?
Like, will they be locked in their smart city house, updating their Tesla brain chip? With still they're on X going, this is so clever. This is so great. What Trump and Musk are doing to us. This is all part of the plan, and you're basically dead. And some of these people, I think they'll never let it go. It was like this thing yesterday, Elon Musk talking about the gain of function stuff. They made COVID-19 that killed millions of people, and I'm just kind of saying, come on. This guy is either an idiot or he's just here to deceive you all. And then you get people saying, something about, you've misread the commas. Look where he put the comma. He's referring to the vaccine. He is not referring to the vaccine. All of them are heavily invested in mRNA technology. He's in bed with an administration that on day 2 announced they're going to just make more mRNA jabs obviously I could believe that, but I was kind of surprised at how quickly they just revealed what they were actually about.
Dude, yeah, it's like Project Stargate, $500 billion to promote AI monitoring healthcare, mRNA vaccine. Just like, what the fuck? And Donald Trump is going, yes, great. And everyone's like, no. And I literally was calling this out. And just like you, I'm like face palming as people were commenting on my X feed and social media. Oh, Doc, I'm getting so angry with your blackpilling. Like, what is wrong with you? Don't you understand? He's creating the problem to fix it and expose it. And I'm like, what the what?
How
What does
much
that even?
more-
What does that mean?
Honestly, how much more exposure do people think the pharmaceutical industry needs at this point? After 5 years of openly, unapologetically murdering almost everyone on Earth.
Dude, it's
They're
15 level chess though. Don't you just, you're, Bob, the problem with you is, right, your brain is so small,
Yeah,
it's
that's
like a little walnut
Yeah.
compared to Donnie's and Bobby's and Elon's, right?
Yeah.
Your tiny little brain
It's true.
can't compute the complexity and the magnificence of their plan.
Mm.
Okay. And that's what you just need to do. You just need to swallow some humble pie and leave it to the big boys to sort it out.
It's interesting. What they announced about, obviously, we've got to have mRNA jabs to cure all the cancer caused by the previous mRNA jabs. But then, it's going to be great though, because we're coupling it with AI. So we're going to use AI to analyze everyone's DNA to pre-diagnose the cancers you may get in the future. Now, if you understand that there are all kinds of theories to exactly how this might work, but these mRNA jabs are heavily linked with DNA, obviously, DNA manipulation. There's
Yeah.
a big problem with it, obviously.
But remember, we were told it doesn't change your DNA.
Yeah, originally we were told it's your DNA. These people are obsessed with DNA. It's like their whole thing about manipulating DNA. Anyway, obviously, like I was talking about, they would have had some idea of how this affected different genetics, but they couldn't take every person and analyze their specific genealogy to tell what type of mRNA, what level, what dose would work the best for them. So now they're going to do that with AI and pretend it's trying to diagnose future cancers. Actually, it's just analyzing your genes to tailor the mRNA for you specifically. And again, AI, I'm a bit of a bit puritanical when it comes to AI, I suppose. I just generally say reject it. Don't use it if possible. When you hear someone like Donald Trump and these mad scientists saying we're going to basically hand this over to AI, that's really bad news.
It's very bad news. So I just want to come back to Trump. So someone just sent me a clip, and it's from yesterday or the day before, where he's in the White House, he's sitting in the Oval Office and at his desk, and some dude standing next to him saying, we've purchased 2 billion doses of the COVID vaccine.
Right.
This is
recent.
This is recent.
Okay.
And I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Like, what the heck? So it comes back to what you were saying. Like, when are the people on the choo-choo hopium train going to come off? Like, will it be when they're in their 15-minute city eating the insect burger with the chip in their brain? Is it then they're going to go, oh shit, they were lying to us? Well, like, how much does it take? So you've got basically Trump signing this 500 billion AI vaccine thing. You've got another guy standing next to him talking about 2 billion dosages of the COVID vaccine. You've got Elon Musk perpetuating this idea that there was a deadly pandemic and that millions died when actually it was millions of people who died. How hard is it to just come out and say COVID was a scam, there was no pandemic, the vaccines were wrong, we'll never mandate ever again, and these jabs are actually toxic and dangerous and a DOD bioweapon. So I just want to quickly say something to you. There's someone called Debbie Lerman who's just come out today with an article with Sasha Latipova. And Debbie Lerman, And I'm going to be publishing it today, later on my Substack. It's about the COVID dossier. Okay. And basically what they're looking at is they've got proof that this was a military operation. It was run by the military and it was coordinated around the world, particularly America, Britain, the EU, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and other countries, but they don't have as much data on other countries. And it's just lockstep, military operation. And, it's terrifying. And Trump, if I was a good guy and I was Trump, I'd be standing there day one going, right, I've been elected. I don't need to win any votes anymore. Guys, this is the deal. The deal is, a few years back, a bunch of really evil people pulled off a massive global scam, injected poison into everyone, and we're going to basically hang every single person who is responsible, and we're going to investigate and ban forever any ideas of mandates, lockdown, social distancing, masking. And yeah, sorry that this happened.
You've got it so wrong again there, you see, because
I've got a small brain.
He can't say that because they'd take him out, they'd kill him.
Yeah, it's my small brain.
And he's so good. He's such a hero. But he would never risk his own life by telling the truth. He's really important for him that he doesn't get killed, you see. And they want him dead because we saw how they almost shot him on the ear.
Yeah.
And they're always messing up these people, you know, CIA and the deep state. They can't, if they want to shoot someone, it's really hard. They often just miss or skim the ear. So,
no, God,
he can't
did God not come down and guide him and made him turn away at the right time? God is protecting him, isn't he?
Guided the bullet into the fireman, into the father, who is obviously, you know, worth much less than Donald Trump.
Of course.
So, yeah, let's save this guy who just tried to kill everyone on Earth and guide the bullet into this firefighter father. Yeah, that's what happened there. It's extraordinary, and in a similar way, what I thought.
But what about the photo shoot?
I'm sure if you're right, like, first of all, let's imagine the presidency is real. I mean, this is another bonkers thing. People spent years looking at Joe Biden. Obviously, the president has no power. It's ridiculous. They're not doing anything. They're just a puppet for show. Until your guy gets in, and then, now he's going to make all these decisions and change everything. Oh, okay. But let's pretend that's not true, and you do have power. I'm sure that if you or I found ourselves in that position, the first thing I would do, and I think you would too, is immediately take all mRNA products off the market and ban their manufacture.
Yep.
And probably I would say every single pharmaceutical company that has made these things and lied about them can no longer do business in this country. And if Donald Trump had done that, I would have probably come out and said, you know what, I might have been wrong about this, dude. That is surprising and that is good. Not only does he not do that, he announces the opposite and says, we're going to have more of these mRNA jabs. And you think, come on, like this. He's not a good guy. He's telling you he's not a good guy.
Do you know what's really painful is not only do we have to defeat the enemy, we have to win over people that are on our side.
Yeah.
And it's so fracking hard. I'm telling you right now, if there's an opening on the enemy side for PR, marketing, and brainwashing, I'm happy to take on that role. It's so easy. Like, honestly, I've joked about this in the past. Like, I'd go to my supervisor and go, I've got this batshit crazy idea.
Yeah.
And I think we can pull it off. And they'd be like, there's no way we can fucking dupe the masses into the... I'm like, listen, if I can pull this off, I'm taking your job. And they're like, go ahead.
Yeah.
And I would fucking pull it off because it's so fucking easy to dupe everybody. What's really hard is to wake them up and to empower them and to make them realize and not hate you in the process. So in medicine, there was always something that you would say, don't shoot the messenger. You know the saying. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, as a doctor, I would give sometimes bad news, and I'd be fracking terrified, Bob.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrified because, someone's come, right, had surgery elsewhere, right? Let me lay it down for you. This person has had surgery elsewhere and it's not gone to plan. Actually, that's an understatement. Not only has it not gone to plan, like, they're in absolute agony. They're 100 times worse than they were before.
Yeah.
And their foot's a mess, right? And I now look at their foot, look at all the tests, and I realize, one, the surgeon wasn't qualified, as in, like, they weren't qualified to do the surgery. They're not who they are saying they are, right? Let's just say that, right? They're not a foot and ankle surgeon.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, this stuff happens, right?
Right.
So you've got someone who's not a foot and ankle surgeon who was pretending to be a foot and ankle surgeon.
Yeah.
You've got someone who then did not make the right diagnosis.
Yeah.
You then had someone who do the wrong operation.
Right.
And they did the wrong operation badly. And then it got a complication which wasn't identified or treated. Okay. And now this person with these multiple things gone wrong pitches up at my doorstep.
So presumably you're looking at the notes and things, Before you encounter the person.
No.
You're thinking all of. I can see what's happened here.
Yeah.
But you can't go in and explain it in the way you just did to me.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I've
Sorry,
spent.
this is an absolute clusterfuck.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I would love to say that. I would love to say this is the mother of all clusterfucks.
Yeah.
But I don't. I spend an hour with this person and I break it down and say, look, this is what it was. And so basically, look, you need another operation, but your foot's never going to be the same, and it's going to be really difficult to do this.
Mm.
Believe it or not, quite often the person will get angry with me.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
And not the fracking idiot who did the fracking operation,
Yeah.
who wasn't a surgeon, who didn't pick up the right diagnosis, who did the wrong operation and badly
Yeah.
and with complications. Like, instead of getting angry at that person, they get angry at me.
Yeah.
All right, I'll give another example. This is not a lie. I am not lying. Person comes to me with this massive fungating mass on their ankle.
Okay.
And I'm like, whoa, what? And he goes, yeah, I've been to see my GP. I've been to see this rheumatologist. I went to see this physiotherapist. I went to see this podiatrist. Like, they've seen 4 people, right?
Mm.
And they said, one person said, I've got this. One person I've got said this. One person I've got said this. And blah, blah, blah. And, you know, it's really bad. And listen, Bob, when I say fungating mass, think of a sci-fi movie.
I can only think of Piers Morgan, but yeah.
Like, we've got something the size of a grapefruit, like, growing out of this guy's ankle.
Okay.
And it's raw, pussy, bloody, oozy, ulcerated.
Yeah.
I look at it straight away. I'm like, that's a tumor. That's a malignant cancer.
Okay.
Right? Send him away quickly for an urgent scan. I get it done on the day because I know what the frack. MRI comes back. I mean, it's an aggressive, high-grade tumor, cancer. I sit down, and this person's got a friend, and I'm like, look, I'm really sorry, but I'm telling this information, which you will not like. But I need to tell you this because this is a matter of urgency. You've had this diagnosis for 9 months and you've not been diagnosed properly. You've had this problem for 9 months and it's not been diagnosed properly. But the thing is, time is of the essence, because every day that passes, this thing can spread to your body and kill you.
Yeah.
And right now, I need to tell you, you've got a tumor. You've got what is an aggressive tumor, and you're likely going to lose your leg.
Yeah.
But that will be the best case scenario.
Yeah.
Baloney amputation. Worst case scenario, it's gone to your liver or lungs, and this could be your death sentence. I hate to tell you this. I'm telling you this to press urgency into your actions.
Yeah.
I'm going to ring my friend right now and say some things on the phone, but don't be alarmed. And I'm going to get you an urgent appointment at the local bone tumor service, the National Bone Tumor Service, because I've got a mate. I'm going to get you an appointment there straight away, and they'll sort it out for you. I did all that. And he went, okay, thank you. He was a bit dazed, left. I got a review on my website saying that I'm incredibly rude.
Right.
And not pleasant, and no bedside manner.
Okay.
Right? Do you want to hear something really funny? 3 years later, this guy writes a book. And he contacts me.
So he survived.
He survived.
Which is great. Yeah.
He writes a book. And he's had an amputation.
Right.
And he reaches out to me and goes, Doc, I just thought I'd let you know you were 100% right with the diagnosis. Thank you so much for putting me in touch with that surgeon. I had my amputation the next week.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I never got in touch with you. You actually did save my life. Everyone's told me since then.
Yeah.
I was upset at the time, and I thought you were horrible and rude, but I wasn't processing my emotions. And now I just want to say thank you, and I'm sorry it's taken me 3 years to say that.
Wow. Well, that's great. And rare. It would be nice if that happened more often, I suppose. But I guess for you, I mean, you would have been aware that you'll be aware with these people that exactly what he said, that you've just given them horrific news and they aren't really thinking straight and their emotions are going all over the place. And, you know, the way most of us are wired is, unfortunately, we just want to lash out at the nearest person.
Yeah.
When that happens. And so it's understandable. And obviously it's really nice if once they've calmed down or got better, to get a message like that is lovely.
But what I'm trying to say is maybe this is why people don't give bad news. Maybe it's just easier to say, well, I don't want to fucking deal with the aftermath and the bomb going off in front of my face. Maybe I'll just pretend everything's fine and just make them go away.
Well,
and someone else can deal with the fallout. What I'm trying to say is humanity needs to learn not to shoot the messenger. Actually, sometimes the person who's trying to warn you and trying to look out for you is telling you the uncomfortable truth.
mm-hmm.
And it's the deceivers who are telling you the opposite.
I suppose it's...
So when we tell people that Trump and Elon and Bobby are not your friends, what I'm trying to say in a long kind of winded way is that you and I are not some bad, horrible people trying to spoil their afternoon. We're just trying to warn them because we care. Don't we?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because I get really annoyed with people. You know, it frustrates me when individuals don't get it. And especially, like you say, when you just give a message, think, here's how I see what's going on. And I really think you need to be careful. This is not what you're being told. And you just get abuse. You know, they insult you or attack you, whatever. That's hard. And I find myself getting annoyed. At the same time, I'm kind of driven by caring very deeply about humanity as a whole.
Yes.
We as a species here, you know, trying to basically lift ourselves up and get better and reach our full potential and not be dragged down by these forces that are there to drag us down and keep us there. That's sort of what motivates me to keep going. And it's why, you know, even though now I'm in a position where, like you, I just keep telling the truth, and the people who were with me for all this time are now starting to get angry and say, you've got it wrong, you don't understand this bit. I've got to keep going with it. You know, I don't want this to succeed. So, you know, there's this idea that some of the solution lies in those of us who understand what's happening, detaching ourselves, basically, and going off and living separately and just rejecting everything. And I understand why that does seem like possibly the only way out of this. But I'd be sad if when I left this world, it was divided like that, where most people are completely enslaved and devoid of any love, morality, consciousness, purpose. And there's just this little group on an island somewhere living as we should be. I don't want my children to be left a world like that, where they can't really experience humanity as one whole community, can't travel to places because they aren't welcome there, or, you know, they don't have the right codes or chips in their brains. I don't really want that. So I'd rather try, if possible, keep trying to wake as many people up to what's going on, even if they, you know, get cross with me.
So why don't you believe that Bobby, forget Trump then, right? Maybe Trump is compromised. I mean, Trump is, to me, exposed himself for who he really is. He's an actor. He's taken a lot of money.
Yeah.
And he's a Zionist.
He's a Zionist. He's an actor. He's always been an actor. He's got an IMDb page.
Yeah.
Been in wrestling a lot. Very, very good at wrestling. And he's also a really, really crap businessman, which a lot of people don't understand. He's had so many failed business ventures in his life and racked up billions of dollars in debt. And if you look at the people who bailed him out every time, that basically tells you who owns him. And that he is as controlled as anyone else you want to look at. And Trump is, because he's such a good actor, because he is such a huge character, a distinctive character that appeals to people. I mean, I get it. He can be very funny. I understand why people are attracted to him. He's very clever. He has great script writers. You know, that stuff with the bin truck was genius. That was all very clever. They use him very well. And they understood that there would be this huge proportion of people in America, and where America goes, the rest of the world follows, who would be skeptical about this whole thing, and who would be particularly skeptical about the jabs. They needed a character exactly like Donald Trump to seem like he was skeptical, you know, talking about alternative treatments and the bleach thing and all of that stuff, which if you think about it, only reinforced the idea that there was a problem that needed to be cured. But when it came to it, he sold all those people the jabs, which was his role.
And to this day, he's never said anything bad about them.
Never said that was a mistake. He still won't say there was anything wrong with them. He still gives himself credit for, I imagine he genuinely believes that Operation Warp Speed happened, and that's when the jabs were made, and if they were done in record time and got out to everybody because of him. It's entirely possible that he doesn't understand that was all a load of nonsense, and he still takes credit for it. But now, you see, phase 1 was about capturing the easy targets, totally brainwashing and destroying spiritually what I used to describe as the left, or, the woke people who are we're always going to go along with this stuff. We're going to surrender immediately. That was kind of the first bit. And we, unfortunately, sometimes, I remember having conversations with, when this is over, what are they going to do with all of us? Do they even know about us? They've forgotten, perhaps they don't mind about those of us who understand what's going on. Whereas now I can kind of see that we were always more of the focus because they knew we were more of a challenge. And that is what Trump is there for. Trump and Musk and Kennedy are there to sell all the same disgusting ideologies and dangerous crap we don't need to us, and just with a different platform, with different slogans, different colored ties, in a different way, and presenting themselves as such heroes that when the same stuff is sold to people again, whether it's mRNA jabs or digital ID, or whatever, people are going to love them so much they'll think this stuff can't possibly be bad.
Of course it can.
If they're offering it to me, so I'll take it.
Hi, me again. You're listening to the Doc Malik podcast. This show is 100% independent and fully funded by listeners like yourself. So if you wish to support Ahmed in all that he is doing, then please subscribe to his channel on Spotify or on his Substack, or simply buy him a coffee with one of the donation links which can be found at docmalik.com. Now, let's get back to the show.
I'll give an example. I'm going to read some stuff off my Twitter line, okay? But I'll give an example. I posted recently on my X account, the Moderna X account, and I'll just read it out to you. And it goes, mRNA could change the future of medicine. Moderna, this changes everything. Our mission is to deliver the greatest possible impact to people through mRNA medicines. Not positive impact. Not healthcare. Just they don't lie, by the way. Well,
they don't lie.
They do not lie.
So such a good point.
You have to give it to them. They never lie. Because when it says our mission is to deliver the greatest possible impact to people through mRNA medicines, they mean that.
Yeah.
They mean that. Right. And so what I said is, does this company look like someone who's worried about its owners, workers, or shareholders going to jail? Of course not. Because none of the political actors, and yes, that's exactly what they are, will do anything to stop mRNA technology or hold the criminals behind the pandemic accountable. Millions more will be injected. Not because of another pandemic, they know the appetite for that's gone, but under the guise of cancer treatments or something else. Even prophylactic jabs. Don't you want to stop yourself getting sick? Just a quick little jab.
Yeah.
But under the guise of cancer treatments and whatever, this is what's going to happen. Even prophylactic jabs. Meanwhile, the continued use and proliferation of mRNA technology, nanotech, and the Internet of Things will weave a tighter web of control around humanity, embedding the digital prison deeper into our daily lives. Trump and his crew will throw the public a few scraps to satisfy their hunger for change, sacrificing wokeism and other worn-out political tools that are blunt and no longer necessary. It will keep the slaves playing at the table while the real game continues. And what are the true evils? Communitarianism, I don't know if you've ever heard of that. Yeah. Stakeholder capitalism, global corp, private-public partnership, and the relentless poisoning of humanity will all march forward unimpeded. And the masses? Too distracted by divide and rule tactics, terror attacks, media sensationalism, these actors and celebrities, and psychological manipulation to even notice their own enslavement tightening around them. Yeah. And what do? I sigh.
Yeah.
You know, that's where we are, mate. And unfortunately, people don't get it. And I'll give you an example. Just bear with me a little bit longer. So, you know, it's bleak. So let's talk about the Elon, Bobby, opium addicts, Donnie, right? This is the kind of stuff that we're dealing with, right? Don't you get it? He has to pander a little bit to get the job.
Oh, yeah.
If he's going to eliminate the pharma ads and allow liability, then he'll completely change everything. And you know what, Bob? If people want the vaccine, if they want the mRNA tech, what's wrong with that? It's their choice.
Oh,
it's all about choice, Bob.
I saw that, yeah.
You're not against choice, are you?
Quite a few people I really thought got the whole thing. We're putting out that response the other day. I don't care as long as they don't mandate it.
All right. Just one more thing. I just want to read out a couple of these comments.
Yeah.
Hi, Doc. In response to your comment, there are a couple of reasons that I know Trump is, as you say, playing chess. And yes, he is. Not because of hopium, but deep research since 2017. Giving it my due diligence along with some strange Trump dreams that tell me he is draining the swamp. I don't know if this person's taking the piss.
He's saying he has dreams about Trump.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I just don't know what's going on. Yeah. Oh. And then, and he goes, pretty obvious that he's trying to appease his opponents while maximizing his chances. You know, you think he should go all in and unleash on them? What good would that do? Like, seriously? Yeah, it would do a lot of good. And
the irony of this actually is that all of these people say, you don't understand how smart he is. You don't understand his genius plan. And every single one of them, I'm thinking the problem you have is you have not acknowledged how incredibly smart this agenda is. And
yes.
You haven't looked at the last 5 years and really recognized how incredibly well orchestrated, timed, prepared for the whole thing was. The propaganda, the lockstep process, the way people were manipulated, the way values were inverted, the way the media played its part, how they took their foot off the gas at just the right moment and then put it back on again. It's so, so clever. And once you understand how clever it is, you ought to understand that there is no way in hell that the people who put this together would allow for some random billionaire to come in from the side and scupper their plans.
Right.
There is just no way they would allow for that to happen. And you can see the level of control that they have over everything. So it wouldn't be possible anyway. If they don't want somebody to get into power,
100%.
They don't get in, which you all saw a minute ago when Trump didn't win, and you were all saying, look, it's all a big fix. There is no elections, there's no fair elections. They just decide who they want to win. Oh, Trump's won. It turns out democracy works again. And he's genuinely going to have power, and they really didn't want him to win. And you think, come on.
I'm going to read a few more. Exactly. I'm going to read out a few more comments because I love this, right? Like, and here we go. RFK said he approves vaccines as long as they're backed by science, ! So RFK is the best man for the job, ! And then the other one is, yep, but probably had to have any chance of gaining confirmation. Part of the game. Maybe what they say is not what they're going to execute. I hear that a lot as well. Just because they're saying that doesn't mean they're actually going to do it. Don't you know? Duh, Bob. Don't you know they're playing 15-level chess? Yeah. And then it goes on. And then they're like, oh, but don't you see? He's brought in changes like they're going to stop people trafficking, and he's saying all these things about child trafficking and people trafficking. And this is what I meant by, I think they're going to give this impression of, fixing a certain number of things.
Oh, absolutely.
Like a little bit of tokenism, the scraps they're going to throw at us to appease people. And people are then going to hold on to those while totally being blindsided and ignorant of the fact that the much bigger agenda is being like a juggernaut is just steamrolling ahead. And it's like Elon Musk is still talking about brain chips and the mRNA jabs and the 2 billion COVID shots.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, forget all that.
Yeah, but at least now, officially, all of those people being poisoned by the shots will either be a man or a woman.
Yes.
So that is what we have to be thankful for. Only 2 genders now being poisoned.
Yeah.
You know, which is great, isn't it? Yeah.
They're so,
I mean,
can I be honest with you? Do you not think they're smart? They're really, I'll give you another example, right? I've got someone ring me up and go, oh my God, have you checked out the new White House press secretary? She's so hot. And I'm like, are you like a 5-year-old kid?
Yeah.
Like, seriously. Like, I didn't respect this person in the first place. And they were ringing me to convince me that Trump's a good person.
Because what? Because he appointed a hot White House secretary.
Like, don't you understand? He's rolling back on the DEI and the wokeism, and this person is really hot, and she's a firefighter, you know, she's a firebrand, and she's speaking the truth, and she's a good one, and she's one of us, and look at the team he's got. And the thing is, they've done a great job of creating this dream team kind of thing, like. And I don't see the dream team about. There's nothing dream team about them. They're a bunch of misfits. Well, but it's been crafted like they're all a bunch of cool people, and they're the cool ones. But the way I put it is like you had a 2-horse race, and if Kamala and Biden were 1 horse, they were actually a donkey that was dead. Yeah. Like when the gates opened, it was a rotting carcass of a donkey.
Yes.
And then and Trump and his dream team is like a 3-legged lame horse. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, but like we couldn't vote for the donkey. Yeah. Right? We couldn't ride that dead donkey. At least we've got this 3-legged horse that's gonna save us. And it's like maybe there is no choice. Maybe you don't choose anything.
Yeah.
What do you say to that? Because people keep saying, well, it was a lesser of 2 evils. What's the answer to that then?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, no, it isn't. I had this the other day, similar thing about somebody on X saying in response to some post I'd written, well, it would have been much worse under Labour if we had, you know, something like, thank goodness we had a Tory government because Labour would have done it so much worse. And I just, you know, again, bit cross. No, they wouldn't. Full stop. And then you go, well, what on earth do you mean? Of course they would. Look at it. And then I said, no, listen, it wasn't good luck. We had a Tory government. That was always the plan. They realised that was how to make it work here. But even if it had been a Labour government, they would have done exactly the same things at exactly the same time. You have to understand that. You've got to get out of this notion that there are 2 different teams who would make different decisions. You know, and weren't we lucky we had the blue team, not the red team? The other thing is,
you know, I've just come up with another analogy.
Okay.
Right. Hear me out. It's like going on a blind date, right? And you pitch up, and there's this guy in front of you that looks like a girl with blonde, long hair, makeup on.
Okay.
She's got a freaking penis.
Yeah.
And then you cancel it. You're like, no, it's not going to work out. And then your mate goes, yeah, but it could have been a lot worse. It could have been a guy with a beard.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, don't you get it? They've both got dicks. I don't want to go out with a guy.
Yeah, but it was a really tiny penis. Imagine if it had been huge, you know? It's that idea.
Yes. Do you see what I mean? It's like...
At least it wasn't a 12-inch monster, you know? I just... the other problem with that lesser of 2 evils thing is you are setting yourself on a downward spiral. You can only go down from there. So what they're going to do, it's true, they present you with a dead donkey and a 3-legged donkey. So you go for the 3-legged donkey. The next time round, they present you with a dead donkey and a donkey skeleton. And you elect the dead donkey, and it just keeps going. That's why you can't begin the process.
But this is where we give consent as well. So 2 things I've realized about these Luciferian satanic people is that, one, they never ever disclose their plans. They actually lay it out. If you look, they tell you. They actually tell you. Yes. Like, it's so...
They do.
Like, they spoon feed you like you're a child. This is what we're going to do to you, right? And then they say, well, like, we're not going to put the gun to your head. Like, we just want you to agree with it. Like, and it's with our compliance and our complicitness that we allow all this evil to happen.
I think that's partly a spiritual thing. I agree with that satanic Luciferian thing of we have to tell you to protect ourselves from karma, they believe. There is also a positive, from their point of view, there's a positive psychological effect that does. And it's hard because I do say to people a lot, listen, when you say we were all lied to, you think we weren't really lied to properly. all the way through, if you looked, they were actually telling you the truth while deceiving you about, it's like,
Did Fauci not begin with masks don't work?
yeah, all these things that, you look back at some of those conferences, evening updates from our lot, where what they would do is they would basically show you a bunch of graphs and statistics. Now, okay, yeah, all probably nonsense and meaningless.
Yeah.
But what they would show you, if you actually looked at it, told you there was no emergency, there was nothing unusual going on. And then after they'd shown it to you, they would say, and based on that, we're in a global pandemic and we have to do all this stuff. So they'd given you the truth you needed to tell that there was nothing wrong. But they then immediately afterwards would say, and that's why there's a pandemic. And I imagine some people
So they
would have
lie,
been
but
thinking,
don't
okay,
lie.
they're showing me that. So in a minute, they're going to say, call the whole thing off. Yeah, it turns out we were wrong. And then when the person who you believe is, trustworthy and knows what they're talking about says, and that's why this is an emergency and we've got to lock everyone up, it does something curious in your brain where you start to not trust yourself. You think, oh, I wasn't expecting him to say that. Maybe I don't understand this stuff. Or maybe I should just get used to contradictions. Maybe I should just go through life now expecting everything to be contradictory. Maybe I should live in a contradictory way. It's just easier because everyone's doing that now. So it's a kind of part of the psychological breakdown. And the hypocrisy, people are always calling out the hypocrisy. And, obviously I do. It's kind of my job. But it's deliberate. It's so much of it is deliberate. It's calculated hypocrisy to mess with people's brains, to totally befuddle them.
Well,
so they don't really know.
I remember what it was like in the height of COVID. I was one of those people. I felt like I'd been spun round and round and round, blindfolded.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what was up or down or left or right. I was like front or back. It was just, you were just so confused. You were also being bombarded with so much information, which was contradictory. And you're just like, how do I even make sense of this? And I would try and open up their statistics and graphs, but it was never like for like comparisons.
Yeah.
It was never the same data points or values. The ranges always were different. And you're kind of like, why is this so unnecessarily hard?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And then I was thinking, I was having the self-doubt. Maybe I'm just not smart enough to figure this out. Maybe I just don't know.
That was interesting as well, the way they made it so complicated. They introduced all these new terms, which I guess you would have been more familiar with than somebody like me. But, to do with viruses and contagion and R0 and all of this stuff to do with the way the data was collected and what the graphs meant. And it all seemed incredibly complicated, like you say. And I knew at the time, there were all these journalists, for example, who thought they were really smart people, but they weren't, this wasn't their area.
Yeah.
But they all decided, because I'm really smart and I went to Eton and Cambridge, I'm going to learn about this stuff so I can write articles. And I'm going to sound really clever because I'll explain to the readers, break this all down, this is what this means and this is what this tells us. Tier 2 and tier 1, and this is how they compare, and blah, 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 blah. And they really thought, they were like, yeah, this is my big chance to prove how smart I am to everyone. And again, it was all nonsense. They never, they write a whole article about case data and what it meant. They never go back to the premise of, are these cases and do the tests tell us anything at all? No, they don't. So, yeah, we've produced all these numbers randomly and put them in these graphs for you to analyze. And you do have to be clever to analyze them. But you're analyzing like a unicorn. There's nothing there. That's the kind of one of the tricks they played. Because you can take anything fake. As soon as you've generated some kind of data, you can hand it to really clever people and they can do all kinds of wonderful things with it. It doesn't make it real. They think it's real.
Yeah.
Because they've worked so hard on it and explained it to everybody.
Well, it's classic, exactly. But like a modeling, whatever, if you put bullshit in, you get bullshit out. It's just garbage. It's always garbage. But can I just quickly ask you something? You just drove here 2.5 hours. Do you not find that when you go out there into normie land, I think I'm living in denial. I still kind of think I'm slightly normie, but I don't think I am anymore.
No.
I'll give an example. I went to see a physio for my neck, and he was like, oh, you're right. Yeah, because he used to refer patients to me and everything. Yeah, like everybody's like, no one talks to me about, no one in my past life, and I knew hundreds, ever contacts me to check up on me.
No.
Which I think is bizarre. All the doctors, all the physios, all the podiatrists, no one talks to me to say, are you okay? What happened? Like, it's like they just don't want to go there. Like, it's just too weird. And so this physio is like now saying, oh, yeah, sorry, I've not been in touch. Oh, it's all right. It's all right. He goes, yeah, but I've checked out your podcast. Well, you've got, some of them are like weird guests. Like, it's a bit weird. I'm like, like which ones? And he couldn't tell me. And it's funny because I don't think I have any weird guests. I think everyone is quite intelligent and smart. Yeah. I don't think anybody's a bit
What it probably means is quite a lot of them really challenge my worldview.
Yes.
So I pigeonhole that as weird because I'd rather not listen to it.
Exactly. So what I'm trying to say is when you go out into that normie land, the service station, you're walking around, you see so many people walking around and you realize we're quite strange in that we know so much. We're skeptical about so much. We talk about things like humanitarianism, stakeholder capitalism, Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, digital cities, digital twin cities, this whole agenda that's going on out there, this enslavement of humanity. Do you ever think that
it's not even as deep as that? I mean, it's not even as complicated as that. You walk around and you look at all these other people, and it's more that you think you are not even aware that this huge catastrophic thing has just happened and is still happening.
No, what I'm trying to say is, could it be we're just wrong? That all these normie people...
Oh, sorry. That's what I didn't realize that's where you're
that all these normie people
Yeah.
are just happily getting on with their life. They're not all dead. Like some people were saying, everyone's going to die of the shot. They're walking around. They're still eating their Big Macs at the service station and their Greggs and their Cornish pasties. And they're still overweight and they're still vaping away. And life is good. They're watching the football.
Yeah.
Football's what matters. Gladiators on a Saturday night, or the Trump show or whatever it is. Here you and I are talking about the doom and gloom and the Luciferians. Are we just a bunch of nut jobs?
Okay. So rather than, you don't mean, would it be easier if we ignored it or pretended it wasn't real, like the Matrix thing where he's eating the steak and says, you realize ignorance is bliss. You mean, are we genuinely wrong?
Yeah.
We got this wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting. I mean, I think I stopped worrying about that about halfway through 2021. I thought really carefully about this. I didn't kind of enter into it lightly when I realized I wanted to stand up and say something and put out certain views in my cartoons and my work, and I understood what was happening to anyone, the few people who were speaking up. I thought, I can't afford to get this wrong. I've got to be really sure in myself that I believe in this, that I know that I can stand by this no matter what happens. Which is why if people look at my early stuff in 2020, it was a lot more lighthearted and kind of just the only comment was, isn't this a bit silly? It was a few months before I started to explicitly say this is completely bonkers and wrong and you shouldn't do it.
Did you find that?
Realize that.
Did you find you just got more courage as well? Like, I don't know about you, but I was quite uncertain. Like, first of all, I fell for it. Then I was getting I was questioning and I was like, and I didn't feel confident in myself to come really full on out. No. But as every month went by and I saw more and more crap and just the evil, I got more and more emboldened.
Yeah. I think there were two things as well. For me, one was I assumed there were quite a lot of other people who were going to take on that role. There were all kinds of people who I think any minute now, this person is going to come out and say what I've been thinking.
Yeah.
And none of them did.
No.
Douglas Murray buggered off to Mexico to drink cocktails on the beach. Jordan Peterson disappeared and then just popped up to say, take the jab so we can get out of this.
And Nigel Farage said Tony Blair should be the vaccine czar.
Yeah.
Oh, hello. Yeah. People remember that, but no, they don't.
So you're thinking it's fine because I can think of all these people who are going to really take issue with this and make really good arguments and write the articles that need to be written. And none of them did. There was Peter Hitchens. It was kind of the only mainstream journalist saying anything about it. And he kind of fell by the wayside, unfortunately. He just kind of announced he'd taken the jabs and gave up, which is his pattern. He does that with a lot of things. He just says, look, we've lost, forget about it. But for a while, it was great because he actually brought me a much bigger audience because he kept sharing my work. But I suppose I thought, okay, most of these people aren't saying anything, and I really want these things to be said. And then I realized, actually, I have a way of saying it that isn't really like anyone else. If I can use my skills as a cartoonist to put these messages out, and I could tell straight away none of the other cartoonists were going to do that. I have an obligation, a responsibility to do that. I should try. But I didn't. I suppose once you understand that it is undeniably morally wrong. Yes, you can have moments where you think about the practicalities of what's actually happening. Have I got that wrong? Is that right? Maybe that's not true. But I've never thought, oh, we got it completely wrong, because we were always right. There was never actually an argument in favor of it. There wasn't two sides to it at all. There was no scenario in which any of it would have been okay. That's the point. So no, we aren't wrong. Potentially there are details, now that we've got into all these different rabbit holes, and sometimes we do this too publicly when we should stick to the basics. Amongst ourselves, we talk about all kinds of possibilities, things that might be happening, have happened in the past. And it's really interesting. And a lot of that stuff, I'm sure we get a bit wrong. But like you say about the jabs thing, well, maybe at one point we said everyone who takes them is going to die, and they haven't. And there are lots of people out there you can meet who've had 10, 11 jabs now, and they're fine, or they think they're fine. But like I was trying to say before, I don't believe now that the sole function, or even the primary function of these drugs is to kill people. I think that is something that happens to a lot of people, and it's a welcome effect because they want fewer people in the world. But I don't think that is primarily what it's designed to do. I think what it does, if it kills you, it means it hasn't been able to basically integrate in the way it's supposed to with your body. But really what this stuff is meant to do is begin a process that fundamentally alters your biology, your mentality, your spirituality, who and what you are, really.
I agree. I also think a lot of the shots were placebos, and there were varying grades of what was going on. So we were like an experiment, and they were seeing what happens: fertility, chronic disease, sudden death. Like it's basically a bioweapon. They even talk about a payload. Who talks about any kind of medical drug like that, like a payload?
I have a friend who's really dug into the distribution in the UK of because if you happen to have somebody who has died, and you happen to find a doctor who will say, this is probably jab related, and you do the yellow card thing and everything, you can, they make it really difficult, but you can trace the vial they had and what batch number it belonged to. So unfortunately, my godmother died shortly after having the AstraZeneca jab. She had after 4 or 5 days, she had a heart attack, no previous heart problems, had a small heart attack, went into hospital, put a stent in, said you're going to be fine now, you won't have any other problems for years, sent her home. Next day she was dead. Another massive heart attack, which doctors have said that doesn't happen. If you have a problem that needs a stent and they put one in, you don't go home and die the next day from another heart attack. It was obviously the jab thing. Anyway, we did that. We traced the batch number for the jab she had. And basically it turns out, because this person in my family then did more research into similar stories, that a batch of this stuff is supposed, it's really strict protocol if you're doing something like this, especially if it's done in this way and it's new. You send one batch to one place and you monitor it. So this batch has gone to this town so we can monitor the people there, and we know they've all had this one. So you can identify if there's a problem with the batch. And what they were doing is splitting. So they obviously knew it was all dodgy, but the batches that had higher doses or were more dangerous for whatever reason, and they were splitting them up. So when you tried to trace the people who'd had the ones from this batch, where my godmother had it in Weston-super-Mare, other people had been having the same batch in Edinburgh, Birmingham, Wales. They were sending them all over the place to basically disperse those instant deaths, where they knew, okay, whoever has the one from this batch has basically got a week tops. They spread them all out.
Can't have it being clustered in one area.
Exactly.
Oh, right. Okay. So back to, do you question that maybe we're all just delusional?
Yeah. Okay.
So if you could sit down in front of a normie, and do a sales pitch to explain, look, this is a reality, what would you say? Like, how would you go about, trying to wake them up to what's going on? And that goes to the bigger question, what do you think is actually going on? What is the agenda and the plan?
Well, I think if you're dealing with a stone cold normie who is more or less oblivious to any of it, tempting though it is to try and bombard them with everything, you got to take it really slow. And I would try to take them on the same journey that I went on myself. Basically, explain how I developed my thinking from being totally mainstream in the machine, a journalist in the media, who'd always more or less trusted that people were fundamentally good, and that good ideas would win, and all of that stuff. And how I first of all I was suspicious, and it didn't make sense, and try and point out that, like we were talking about earlier, well, they were telling you there was a pandemic, but then they were giving you this information that meant there wasn't. And they were telling you they needed to do these things and that they would work. Nevertheless, those things were wrong. And the reason they were wrong is because, you can't allow the state to remove people's rights in that way. First of all, it was illegal. There was actually nothing that allowed any government to do that legally. Secondly, they don't have the right to do it anyway. You should not want your politicians to have that right. And thirdly, they then admitted soon after they'd done one lockdown that they knew that it was what they were doing was actively going to kill people, thousands of people. So what you have there is this situation of the state at best trading the lives of their citizens, at worst just killing one group of people because they have a hunch they don't even know it might stop a cold spreading in hospitals. No one can agree to that, no matter how frightened you are, no matter how much you believe the story, you cannot agree, because it's always wrong, every single time. Now, they did it in a very subtle way, thereby kind of implementing this safety policy of, just stay at home. It's easy, watch Netflix, get your food delivered. Great for the middle classes, who are the people who have influence. They'll love it. So, people won't realize it's wrong. And people forgot. It's pretty obvious that if you lock 70 million people in their homes and you no one sees them, and you mean they can't you cancel their appointments, their health, their consultants' appointments, their therapies, all of that, one or two people are going to die. If you destroy their businesses, make people homeless, make them impoverished, one or two people are going to die. And the government comes out and says, you know what, actually, just from the first one, a couple of 100,000 people we expect to die from that lockdown. And then someone at Bristol University said, it's going to be more like 500,000. And you're thinking, all right, so this is the government saying, we just knowingly condemned 500,000 of you to death. And that should be everyone in total agreement of this stops now. And we arrest these people because they just admitted it. And what did they do? They said, we're going to have another one. We're going to have another lockdown. In fact, we're going to have 2 more and bugger about with this tiers thing in between, which is the same. And everyone just went, oh, yeah, okay, because they still believe the story. Anyway, so, and when I'm kind of get to that point, and I think this is really bizarre, and I don't, what's going on here? Because I knew, I talk about this in my show, I try and explain it, the live show I did, which is still, people can see it on Twitter, free. That, I'd observed politicians get themselves into situations where they've essentially designed a crap policy, or it's backfired, or the public are really cross about something. And they find a way or create a way of just backing out and kind of making people move on and forget. And I was thinking, okay, well, surely with this, they're all going to find a way of backing out of kind of, and the excuses were coming every day. Every day a new piece of information appeared that would have allowed them to say, actually, we got this wrong. Sorry. We're going to stop as you were, back to normal. Or they could have said, China, pesky Chinese, they deceived us again, even if that wasn't true. There were all kinds of ways they could back out, and they just weren't. Every single time one of these opportunities came up, they'd just double down and say, we need to do more of it. I thought, what is going on here? I'm not used to this. This isn't conforming to the pattern I've seen for the last 10 years working in a newspaper covering all these different stories. So then you do begin to, I suppose for the first 6 months, I thought this is so obvious. There is no argument in favor of it. It's totally bonkers. This can't go on. And in a few months, it'll all come out.
Yep.
And we'll have a big party.
Yep.
And we'll celebrate the fact that,
Yep.
common sense won. And when it doesn't happen, and when it starts to become obvious that this is designed to go on and on and on, you start to think, well, what the hell's going on here then? This feels orchestrated. This seems like there's a plan. And they're all doing the same things at the same time. Loads of this stuff seems like it has to have been pre-prepared. Loads of the slogans, the propaganda, the posters, like the mask thing. I think that was the moment for me when they suddenly said, turns out masks work. And within a few days, everywhere, posters for putting a mask on, and this immediate hysteria over you have to wear a mask. I was on holiday in the middle of nowhere on Exmoor with my family when this happened that week. And I was thinking, well, at least there won't be people doing that here in this tiny little village in the middle of nowhere. And I was driving along in my car, and there were people walking in country lanes on their own with a mask on, straight away, after a couple of days. And I just thought, okay, this is an agenda. They are trying to do something here. This is not a response to a situation that's getting out of hand. These people aren't gripped by fear. They are trying to fundamentally change something about human society here. That's what this is. And at that point, you start to look at the stuff that you'd been ignoring. Agenda 2030, WEF, Bill Gates, 5G. For a long time, I ignored the 5G thing. All these things that you think, no. We don't need that because I'm just here saying, look, it's wrong. It's morally wrong. That should be enough. We don't need all these other things. But when you start to think, I have to figure out what's actually happening here.
And this is why,
to be able to comment on it.
One of the reasons why I love your X feed and your artwork and your, I don't think I've found anything I actually disagree with, because you tackle everything. Like, you're not a one-ticket person. Like, there's some people talk about early treatment, or no viruses, or it's 5G, or whatever it is. Like, you talk about everything. And that's what I do as well. I'm not a one-ticket person. Like, there are so many assaults on humanity right now. And, like, everybody thinks their thing is the thing. Like,
exactly.
But it's not.
Yeah.
Like, there are multiple things happening right now, and we need to talk about all of them and try and uncover all of them. Like, everything's linked in some way, and it's a greater plan. And if you just think, oh, everything's just this one thing and this is the most important thing, no, you're missing a trick. And like you, I was just a private foot and ankle surgeon, orthopedic surgeon. I was thinking some bigger professor, some head of the Royal College of Surgeons or pathologists or GPs or whatever. Yeah. Someone's going to come out with a position statement. Someone's going to say with someone who's got a big following. Yeah. I didn't have a following. I didn't have social media, exposure. I had nothing. Nothing. I just wanted to fix broken ankles and have a quiet life in this little wee tiny oasis that I've crafted out. That's all I wanted. No one came forward. And then when the mandates came, and that for me was the big red line. Yeah. Like when you're telling people like you need to take this jab to keep your job. Yeah. That I was livid. Yeah. Like honestly, like shaking angry, because all my life, professional life, I've spent time consenting people for surgery. And like this idea of me saying to people, oh, you need to have the surgery, otherwise you can't work. Is it safe? Yeah, it's really safe. I've been doing this operation for 1 day. Are there any risks and side effects? None that I'm going to tell you about. Like, and by the way, you need this surgery every 6 months to keep your job. Yeah. Forever. Like, if I did that, I'd be in jail. Yeah. Right? I would be in jail. But Chris Whitty, the chief medical officer, can talk about mandates, and all the other doctors and TV celebrity doctors can push this crap on us, and they get promoted, they get money, they get notoriety, they get fame. Yeah. So I was livid, and I was like, I need to speak up, and that's why I went on GB News, and then that's why I was on my marches, started going on X. Then when the vaccine harms came, I did the video on X, and it went viral. I don't want it. I always say I'm an accidental activist. I don't want this life. No. I don't want to be cancelled. No. I don't want to be a podcast host.
I didn't want it.
I didn't.
Wasn't the plan.
I've got a young family, got a mortgage, but it got to a point where it got so bad. I was like, I need to speak up. Like it was boiling inside me like a volcano. It just erupted. Yeah. I couldn't cage it anymore. So I'm like that with you. But then I'm going to come back to like, what do you think the agenda is? What are, like we talked about Agenda 21 and 2030 and stakeholder capitalism. What is it these guys want? And if it is depopulation, they've done a really shit job, because for the last 100 years, the population has only gone up in the world.
No.
What is it?
I do not think that the main thing that motivates these guys is depopulation. No. I suppose we should start by conceding the fact that a big problem we have, and I suppose something that gives our critics ammunition and maybe makes it difficult for us to explain to a normie, because eventually you reach a point where they'll say, but who are they? Who's doing this? Who do you mean? Who is doing this? And one of the difficulties is that I went through this process of really looking at what is going on and what the agenda is, as in they are trying to take us somewhere. They are trying to move humanity to a very specific destination where it's very, very different. The nature of a human being is different, and the way we live is completely different in an entirely bad way. That's what's going on here, and it becomes completely undeniable. It did for me. There is no way that a group of people has not designed this, has not planned this for a very, very long time, because everything about the way our culture and technology, society has developed over the past 100 years, at least 100 years, facilitates what is happening now. All these ideas have been seeded in culture for such a long time. We were prepared, and 2020 was the time when everything was ready, and they knew, if you want to go back to people who still genuinely think there was a pandemic, you say, well, isn't it lucky that this pandemic that could have happened at any point didn't happen in the 1930s, for example, or the 1940s, when so much of this stuff would not have been possible, when you didn't have Zoom and you didn't have supermarket deliveries and people just wouldn't have put up with it. It wouldn't have been comfortable. Yeah. Anyway, these people exist. Now, I can speculate about who they might be. And I do. And I try to look into that now and again, not too much, because it's dark and you don't want to spend too much time. But none of us can say for certain. And that is a bit of a problem when we're asked who are they, and you say, I don't know, I can't give you an exact answer.
They've done a good job of hiding themselves.
However, they definitely do exist, and they are not Bill Gates, Klaus Schwab, Anthony Fauci, Donald Trump, Keir Starmer. These are the faces we're presented with. And the whole point of the kind of people who are able to orchestrate something like this and plan it is you don't know who they are, you don't know where they are. So I think people just have to accept that they must exist. They have to exist, or this whole thing wouldn't have happened. Unless, I suppose, the only other possibility is it was kind of AI that years ago went rogue and made this plan. But that doesn't really fit with, when you look back now at history with this other perspective on the nature of the world and where they want to take us, you can see this has been years and decades in the planning. So I think that whoever these people are, wherever they are deeply evil and deeply spiritual, in the sense that their main motivation is more of a spiritual belief than a practical desire. So these things about, depopulation, that's a practical thing. Oh, there are too many people, we want to get rid of them. Or, control grid. We want a way of just locking everyone up and controlling them and stopping them traveling. Those are all practical things that you can sell to people as, we're trying to solve a problem we've identified, climate change or pandemics or whatever. But really, those are still just means to the end. They're just the control, the money, all of this stuff they're still just tools to get us to the final destination, which has to do with fundamentally destroying the nature of what makes a human being unique, special, gives us meaning, gives us purpose, enables us to create, to make beautiful things, to speculate about our place in the world, to have some connection with the divine, whatever you want, whatever that means to you, whatever you want to call it, but understanding that you are part of something greater. All of this stuff that is the key to us, I think, becoming much, much more than we are now, and really living much better lives, and not having so many of the hardships that all human beings experience. They want to take that away. When you look at, I was thinking about this the other day, because obviously there are a lot of people in our camp who've found Christianity. There are a lot of people who've gone the sort of David Icke route, believe, alien stuff or simulation, whatever it is. Some people are kind of in between. But when you look at every narrative has one very important thing in common. Even in the biblical narrative, there is this question that hangs over humanity, and there is this conflict between forces more powerful than we are over what should happen to us. And the question is, should humans be pushed down, suppressed, and forever trapped in slavery? Or should they be allowed to flourish and grow and reach their full potential? That is in all the stories. And when you look at history, that's the conflict that's always existed. And now it's like a final big push from those people who are part of this weird belief system, this weird cult. They must think they get a reward at the end of it, but it's like they've pledged themselves to ensure that humanity can be pushed down so far, so violently, that they can never get up again, will never regain those vital things that make us what we are. That, I think, is their mission. I don't think they're going to succeed because of their very nature. They don't actually understand what a human being is. They lack love. They lack creativity. They lack an understanding of beauty. They're incredibly hubristic. They will consume one another eventually. And there's definitely no reward waiting for them at the end of this. So in some ways, I feel like the most important thing for us to do is endure what's going on.
Weather the storm.
Weather the storm. That's the big question mark, is can you face all of this? Can you have this massive onslaught of wickedness? Everything will be thrown at you that could possibly ever convince you to let go of your decency, your humanity. If you can hold on through that, if you can keep swimming against that current, things will be better, because it can't last forever. It will eventually destroy itself.
I agree.
So, although I'm kind of still trying to wake people up, and I'm still trying to doing cartoons, I won't stop, and I'm still kind of trying to do my bit to help. But that is, I suppose, how I see my part in all this, is helping people to keep swimming against that current, to not get dragged under.
Well, your cartoons are fantastic, and they really gave me a lot of hope and strength. When I was when I was like, oh, I don't know, am I crazy? I said, well, has the whole world gone crazy, or am I crazy?
Yeah.
Probably me. Can't be the whole world. The whole world against just little old me. No, it's not possible. But then I would look at your stuff and go, no, the whole world has gone crazy. I'm the one that's still normal.
Yeah.
And it was kind of terrifying. It was kind of really scary at the same time. But yeah, and it's like when one thing after another, you just realize, like, I've come so far now in the last 3-4 years. Like, I've just questioned everything.
Yeah.
In the last 200-400 years, if not more. I don't trust anything that we've been told. I think pretty much everything is a lie.
Yeah.
And it's kind of scary and unsettling, because you want sure footing and grounding.
Yeah.
And, and every single time I think, right, I've found my tribe, something will happen and more people will leave me. So, for example, like with the Ukraine war, I had a whole bunch of doctors and people who were like, oh, yeah, COVID's a scam. And then it would be like, oh, but we need to fight bad Putin. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Where, what?
Yeah.
And then the Israel-Gaza thing happened. I was like, oh my God, it's terrible what Israel's doing. It's a 9/11 fake thing. It's not real. And then it was suddenly like, oh my God, I can't believe you're a Hamas terrorist sympathizer. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And then it's like Trump. No, I don't trust Trump and Elon. And it's like a whole bunch of like, oh my God, and it's like, I just feel like it's getting lonelier and lonelier. And like there's less and less people around you who think like you. You just think, what is wrong with me? Like what?
Yeah.
When it came to Gaza and Israel, like I've seen your comments. Why are you a Hamas terrorist sympathizer? Like, what's your problem?
Yeah.
Why are you?
That whole thing was really fascinating. Well, I suppose it wasn't that surprising, in that you could immediately see exactly how it fits into the overall agenda. How does this help get us to hell, essentially, where they're trying to take us? That's really clear.
Explain, because some people will be listening and go, no, we don't understand.
All right. Okay.
What do you mean by that? Hamas launched this horrible invasion into Israel. They beheaded and raped 40 babies. And you know what? Was it one of the famous people, Jordan Peterson, give him hell?
Yeah. Give him hell, Netanyahu.
Yeah. So what's wrong with that?
Thanks for your help there, Jordan, as always.
Oh, did he not also say, take the goddamn shot?
Yeah, he said he said just take the shot so we can get out of this.
It's funny how they say certain things at the right or wrong time, and they always come out after the fact. But anyway, back to Israel.
So again, we're back to this thing about story. Or maybe I didn't mention this. I've said this before. So one of the big things that's happening here that people need to understand is we are being presented with stories all the time. People get really hung up about whether those stories are true or not true. We, more than most people, we're very concerned now with, did this really happen or did it not really happen? Is it a psyop? Is it staged? What's going on here? Obviously, it always matters whether a story is true. But what's happening is, sorry, I've been talking for a long time.
Sorry.
What's happening is we're being presented with stories, and as a result of those stories, we're then being told, because of this story, you must abandon your moral principles or invert them. Now this thing you always thought was bad is okay because of the story. That's where it does not matter whether the story is true or not. You can't do that. The whole point of having moral principles is they must withstand any story, any context. There is no scenario that can come in and make you abandon those core values. And once that's happened, you're basically doomed. We have to hold on to them. So I'm skeptical about October 7th. That narrative did not make sense to me. It seems pretty nuts that it's exactly the way it was described. And it seems as though since it happened, most of it has been, even the Israeli regime has said, yeah, it didn't really happen quite like that. And sure, we opened fire on our people, the Hannibal Directive, all of that stuff. However, even if it's 100% true, in fact, even if it's 100 times worse than what Piers Morgan thinks happened on October 7th, even if, 100,000 people had been killed and raped or whatever, doesn't justify what then happened. Nothing justifies the total annihilation of an entire people who are essentially trapped in a prison camp next door to you. That is always wicked. That doesn't mean you think, if October 7th really happened, that doesn't mean you think it's okay either. It's bad. But this is, the law of violence. It's the endless cycle of revenge. Because you did this to us, because a baby was killed, we're going to go and kill 100 of your babies. Who does that? Who responds to, and people, were describing it as a war. A war is a conflict between two governments, two states that have armies, and the armies fight each other. This is one of the most powerful military forces in history, backed by the United States, possibly the most powerful military force, totally annihilating a country that doesn't even have an army or a media or a government. I mean, fine, if you want to believe there are loads of organically established terrorist cells in that place, okay, nevertheless, they don't have an army. This is just total annihilation. And anyone who thinks that if Israel and America couldn't wipe out Gaza entirely overnight if they wanted to, is kidding themselves. Of course they could. This is not some struggle. This is not some noble struggle or a war. It's a total annihilation. The other thing that is completely absurd about it is that immediately it turns out that loads of these people who, especially on the conservative side, who you thought got what was going on and understood what had been happening,
now on the reform side,
completely obsessed with Israel, this weird kind of devotion to the idea of Israel and the state of Israel. But
they're the good guys, and you got the dirty, horrible, barbaric Muslims raping Muslims.
Yeah, let's address this quickly, because I was aware from the beginning of how many people were going, it's the Jews, all the time. This is all the Jews, you've got to look into it. Now, I think it's so stupid and dangerous, and I have a real problem with saying it's the anything.
Yes,
You'll hear people saying it's the Catholics, it's the Jews, or even it's the Vatican, or whatever. When you use a phrase like that, when you say it's the Jews, you are referring to hundreds, thousands of people just like you and me.
100%.
completely ordinary people, meant some of whom will be assholes, some of whom will be incredibly decent, most of whom have absolutely no stake in what is happening in the world. It's nothing to do with them. Anyone who tries to deal with any issue they identify rightly, that there is a group in control who are making these horrible plans, who just kind of lazily says, even if they identify, oh, some of them call themselves Jewish, they may well call themselves Jewish. If they identify that, you can't go around saying it's the Jews. It doesn't mean anything. That's only going to cause
more division.
So, more division.
Do you know I've done a podcast with Larry Palavesky?
Yeah.
It's titled Why It's Not the Jews.
Yeah.
But he's Jewish, obviously. And it's because it's exactly what you've just said. It plays into their divide and rule. Like I said,
Exactly.
I think it's Luciferian people. And I think they've brainwashed a lot of really good Israeli people into trauma. They've been trauma mind controlled as well.
Yeah.
They've been told, you speak to your average Israeli, they go through school being told that everybody hates them, the whole world wants to kill them. That all the Arab nations want to kill them, and that all the Palestinians are subhuman. If you give them a chance, they're going to rape you and kill you. So they've all been trauma mind controlled. And, and I always say the evil ones have actually destroyed both those people, because at the moment, the Israelis start dehumanizing all the Palestinians, guess what? They've dehumanized themselves. It's a cycle that no one wins, and it's not the Jews, it's the Luciferians, and they're using and exploiting every people. And I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't be surprised if one day they throw Israel under the bus when it suits their agenda. These people are evil people. It
would suit the agenda to eventually turn everyone against Israel. You can see how that would work. Like you say, anybody in a position of power, or even fake power, who endorses these ideologies of locking people up, taking away their rights, forcing them to have injections, killing thousands of people, whether it's with lockdowns, whether it's with injections, whether it's with missiles. That person can call themselves a Jew or a Christian or a Hindu or a Muslim, whatever, and they're none of those things. They're satanic.
Yep.
They're incredibly evil. There is by no stretch, and I know people can say, oh, look at the Quran, it says this stuff is justified. Okay. They don't fit the definition. They are not living as they clearly, the problem is they clearly have a belief system, these people, and it doesn't really fit with any of the major religions.
I would actually,
something else,
I would turn around and say, look at the Talmud, look at the Bible.
Yeah.
The Bible was used to conquer and enslave whole swathes of humanity. All these books have been used by people.
Listen, someone could find an excuse to commit a global genocide in Harry Potter in 100 years' time. You can find it in all kinds of books if you want to, if that's the kind of person, if that's the sort of stuff you want to do. The other thing that I really couldn't get my head around with the Israel-Gaza thing was, what you're not talking about with that is, okay, they've been attacked and these hostages have been taken and Israel has to defend itself, or Israel has to get these hostages back. Okay, but when you say Israel, and this is a bit like talking about the Jews or when you're talking about Israel, you're not talking about individual fathers whose daughter's been kidnapped going all Liam Neeson and running in over the border with a gun and kicking ass and getting his daughter back. You are talking about the state, the Israeli regime headed by Benjamin Netanyahu taking this action. So you can't treat it like some kind of action movie and of course, as an individual person living in Israel, if you're there and someone's running at your house with a rocket launcher or a machete, yeah, you have the right to protect your family and defend yourself. But when we're talking about a state, a government with all that military power, all that firepower, that is not the same thing. So if Benjamin Netanyahu is the guy who is desperately trying to defend Jews in Israel from this evil, from being attacked like this, we just watched the guy take away all of their rights, terrorize them, persecute them, totally gleefully, unapologetically, and then make sure they were the first people in the world to be submitted for this horrifically dangerous medical experiment. I'm sorry, but by the time that came along, somebody like him knew exactly what was going on. He knew exactly what was happening. He knew that he would have killed them with the lockdowns. He was removing the rights of Jewish people in Israel. He was treating them like diseased rats. I know everyone else was treated like that, but he was doing it to Jews in Israel. I noticed this. I'm sure you noticed this. A lot of people like Norman Fenton and Renee Honderkamp and Laura Dodsworth and these other now baffling idiots also noticed it. In fact, they spoke up about it. Everyone was saying, I cannot believe what they're doing in Israel. And I said, and you had to be careful about this, making these comparisons, but it's like, this is fairly anti-Semitic, isn't it? It's kind of, he's persecuting Jews, taking away their rights. He's poisoning them.
Yeah.
After he's poisoned them, he's making them show papers to go to a restaurant.
Right.
This is kind of the most anti-Semitic world leader since Hitler, is it not? Is that not okay to say? Whatever you think, this guy doesn't care about his people. He's actively tried to kill his people in the most disgusting, I suppose, darkly ironic way you can imagine.
If he has to burn down the Middle East to stay in power, he'll do it. And if it means millions of Israelis dying.
He is one of the most wicked people, I think, who's ever lived. I'm just going to say it. I think he's really, really despicable.
Yeah.
Okay. And it disgusted me to see what he was doing specifically to the Jewish people in Israel during the pandemic stuff. Nonsense. Anyway, if you take a position that Israel's justified, it has to defend itself. And like I said, you're not talking about Israel, you're talking about that guy who's giving the orders. You must suddenly believe that he absolutely doesn't want Israelis to die. This guy just spent 3 years desperately trying to kill as many of them as he can and totally terrorizing them and treating them like dog shit. Suddenly, is when someone comes to him and said, Hamas have just broken in and killed X number of people, that this guy is not going to react by going, great, got a few I missed with my jabs. That's brilliant. The idea that you're suddenly able to flip and go, he's a great guy who cares about his people, is so ludicrous. And so many people did it immediately. And anyone who says, actually, I think he's a pretty bad guy based on what he just did, and now he's started killing the people next door, and he's just using missiles instead of injections, but the same guy doing the same thing, that was anti-Semitic. You're really anti-Semitic. You're going, oh, well, actually, if you think about it, he's quite anti-Semitic. I've never killed any Jews myself or persecuted them or wanted any of their rights to be removed. He did quite a lot of that. So if we want to talk about the definition of anti-Semitism, Benjamin Netanyahu is quite high on the list that he fits it pretty well. No, if you criticize him, you're anti-Semitic. So I'm kind of thinking, this is so weirdly, there are so many layers of irony to all this.
Yep. Inversions and inversions. It's crazy.
I thought, I'm independent now. There's no one telling me what I can or can't draw. I can take some risks. I can push this idea of satire, try and take it to its limits or push the boundaries of it. So I thought, I want to try and do something that kind of, in one way, makes the point about how ironic this whole thing is, specifically addressing these wails of anti-Semitism when people are just saying, maybe stop killing children and babies wantonly. And also actually highlights how completely disgusted anyone who abhors anti-Semitism, as I do, doesn't like it, should be with this figure of Benjamin Netanyahu, precisely because he has become the living manifestation of the trope, of the very propaganda these people have had to fight so hard against for so long, that the idea that Jewish people indiscriminately kill children is, as I am aware, lots of people have been taught in history, that was the trope. That was what they called blood libel. You know why it's called blood libel? Because it's not true that all Jewish people indiscriminately kill children. So what happens when the most powerful representative of Jewish people on earth starts indiscriminately killing children for months and months on end? Everyone should stand up and say, this is absolutely disgusting. What are you doing? You have invoked the stereotype that was so disgusting that we had to, and this isn't blood libel because you're actually fucking doing it. It's not libel because it's real. Anyway, so I just drew this cartoon, the kosher cartoon that I'm sure lots of people have seen, based on all of that. And I thought, I know exactly what the reaction to this will be. And the reaction is the whole point. I know people are going to look at this. Most of them are going to say, this is disgustingly anti-Semitic. Is the whole punchline.
You just did what I did, which was deliver, the bad news. And they shot the messenger.
Yeah.
Isn't it? That's what happened.
Sort of with that, I was kind of delivering the bad news in the knowledge that they wouldn't understand the point I was making, and all they would do was scream anti-Semitism, which was sort of what I was trying to provoke.
But it is delivering the message that they don't want to know, because what you're doing is you're shining the mirror up and showing that their idea is so wrong, that they're putting faith in the wrong person, and that what they're actually condoning is mass slaughter and murder. And that's painful. That's a painful message. So rather than receive that message, it's just easier to shoot you and go, no. Like, you know what? You're anti-Semitic. You're a bad person. But all you're doing is like trying to just get to the truth. We're all being played. We're all being played.
I think what I'm also doing and what you've done, this is a rare thing now, unfortunately, is I am being consistent in my values, in the values that I've stuck to from the beginning of all this. Once I realized how much these values actually meant to me, turns out, which surprised me. I thought, I didn't think I cared so much about that stuff, and it turns out I'll risk everything to defend them. And I thought you got to be consistent. You have to stick to that. You can't. When a new story comes along, you can't suddenly apply new values because it's convenient, or it turns out everyone thinks this is okay, so I'll just go along with it.
Yeah, and you end up getting more supporters and you get more likes. If you just go along. Actually, sometimes going against the grain, as we've discovered, more often than not, gets you into trouble. Gets you people, saying, "Oh, what is wrong with you? Why are you doing this?" But
listen, if I'd never drawn that cartoon, I'd have a bigger following now. I'd have, all kinds of opportunities that I probably won't get now.
What does that tell you? That tells me that you're over the target.
Yeah, but what is the point in me getting myself to this position where I've ended up being totally free to say what I like. No one can tell me what to do. I don't work for anyone. There's no control whatsoever. And I think I have a good understanding of what's going on. And weirdly, I've got a big audience. So there are all kinds of people who might draw cartoons and have good things to say and be totally independent, but no one sees what they do. Loads of people see my work, it gets shared all over the world. So what is the point in being in that position and compromising or not saying stuff because you're afraid that people who won't get it will never follow you again, or you won't be able to get a venue for something you want to do or whatever. We've got to have fewer people like that. We have to have some people who just, if they know something is true and right, they say it.
That's me.
There are the consequences.
That's me. Well, listen, we need to wrap up now because I'm conscious of the time. You're getting a dry mouth.
I am getting dry, yeah.
Listen.
Sound like Bobby Kennedy.
Are you promised you're going to come back?
Yes, absolutely.
You promise?
Come back, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely promise.
Final question. You're on your deathbed. Could be tomorrow.
Oh, yes.
You've got your beautiful family all around you.
Yeah.
Before you pass on and meet your maker, what words of wisdom or advice would you give to them? What would be your final words?
Should have thought about this beforehand, shouldn't I? Because I know you ask everybody this. Okay, well, just off the top of my head, what comes to me, because you said wisdom, I think this is really important. Understand the difference between intelligence and wisdom. And obviously, it's great to have both, but if you could only have one, have wisdom. And know that to be wise is to experience life, is to go out and live life. Unfortunately, it's to suffer some hardships, have to deal with some problems, get over some obstacles. And that makes you wise. And understand there are a lot of very, very intelligent people who have no wisdom whatsoever. And that is a big reason why we are where we are now. So cultivate wisdom, cherish wisdom, and try and get yourself some.
Beautiful. I, Ahmed Malik, am a private civilian protected by the Geneva Convention. My Substack, social media posts and podcasts are my personal experiences, observations and opinions. This information is for educational purposes only. Although I am a doctor, I am not your doctor and I am not providing medical or legal advice to you or to the wider public. I am not licensed or registered with the GMC or any other licensing board. The responsibility for the interpretation, due diligence and use of the information from my Substack and my podcast lies with you, the viewer and or listener. Please do your research and use your discernment. It is not my intention to harass, intimidate, offend, defame, conspire, blackmail, coerce, or cause anxiety, alarm or distress to any man or woman, and the information presented here is done so with peaceful and honourable intentions. Enjoy, folks.